Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 304. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You Know. On this episode, we're going to be discussing Night of the Owls, and we're going to be doing a heavy focus on Batman issue number 8. Also, as just our thoughts on crossovers in general and what we're excited about with this one. How we think this one's going to be paced out, because we're not 100% sure on that. We're also going to be talking about casually books like Batgirl and Nightwing, and a lot of these books are going to be tying in like Red Hood and the Outlaws, Birds of Prey, and just our thoughts on the recent events in those books in a casual segment as we start heading back into looking at the New 52 since we've been doing our exploration of Nightfall and Night's End and all that. Finally, on this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the last 2 books of the brand new Vertigo releases. There's those 4 books that were released that we were shouting out. Dominique Laveau, Voodoo Child number 2. We're also going to be discussing the new Deadwardians number 1 with a casual chat about issue number 2 because Jim's read it and he wanted to do a little teaser about it. I haven't read issue number 2 as of this recording. I also want to give a quick apology to friend of the show, Daryl Taylor. We were going to have Daryl join us to discuss the last 2 Vertigo books, and what happened was, with Jim's schedule in mind, my father's 70th birthday was this weekend, we had to record in chunks, and it was really hard to coordinate in a way where we could have a guest on with us, so we'll have Daryl come on in the future, and I want to thank him for his patience and apologies that we couldn't get him on this episode. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, it is the start of May, and this is your opportunity to head over to DCBService.com and check out the amazing deals they're going to be doing for this month. So check out DCBService.com to see everything they're going to be offering, up to 75% off discounts. They have these crazy discount sales on pre-orders. Over at InStockTrades.com, Neil Gaiman, Dave McKean, Black Orchid, the deluxe edition hardcover. This was before Sandman. If you haven't a chance to read, this is a gorgeous 4-issue miniseries that's now being collected for the first time in hardcover. It's 168 pages, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. This is a great way to get hardcovers. And if you haven't shopped at InStockTrades.com before, I highly recommend you head over there and browse. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. It's really quick to get up to that amount, and that really does save you that much more off of the amazing deals there. I mean, 50% off on that, getting that for $12.49 for a hardcover. These deluxe editions, I don't know if you've gotten any of these from DC, but they're gorgeous, gorgeous volumes, and I've been loving that they've been doing these. This is definitely on my list of something I'm going to be grabbing. I remember fondly reading the original 4-issue miniseries. I don't have it anymore, so this is a great opportunity for me to get in this kind of volume with this kind of quality delivery, so I'm really looking forward to this one myself. But go over and shop at InStockTrades.com and check out the deals they might have for you, and I want to thank InStockTrades.com and DCBService.com for supporting our podcast. Oh, James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the book, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
So let's talk some comics.
So, who's got a camera? Ooh, get one of me and the kid first. Then you and me, then the 3 of us, and then one with the crowbar. Then...
We've got the first big crossover in the New 52 coming right now with this Night of the Owls. The Prelude's here right now. Along the way, we're going to be taking breaks from just covering new books to also jump back to big events that are happening like this in the New 52. I'm geeking out over this. This is issue number 8 we're going to talk about. It's Scott Snyder's the writer, Greg Capullo is the penciler, Jonathan Glapion inker, FCO Placencia is the colorist. I apologize any name butchery anywhere in that. Richard Starking's letterer. Katie Kubert, associate editor. Mike Martz is the editor. Jason Fabach and Peter Steigerwald on the variant cover. Capullo and FCO Placencia on the cover. Batman created by Bob Kane. And I definitely apologize for any name butchery because, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want from the Batman universe. And when I say the Batman universe, I want to incorporate into all that all of the titles that are satellite titles that are touching into this. Everything from Batgirl to Red Hood and the Outlaws to Nightwing to Birds of Prey. Books that are going to be in Batwing and things like that. The books that are casually going to be becoming a big part of this storyline. And when I say casually, some of them directly lead right into this. Others of them, like Catwoman, it's going to be circumstances that are thrusting Catwoman into this event. I love the fact that not every single book is leading into this in the same way. They're doing it in ways that make sense. Batgirl's events that are happening in her life, like I'm wondering if James Jr., just for an example, is tied into this, or if the fact that she's going to be involved in this is going to allow James Jr. a chance to do more things behind the scenes because Barbara's not going to be aware of his presence. Does that make sense? There's a couple of opportunities here with James Jr. that I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you don't know where he's going to go, how he's going to strike. And that was the thing when I read that and they brought him back into the mix. I was like, oh man, Court of Owls. Is he part of the court? Is he just a tool? Where is he going to be used? How is he going to be used? Yeah, he was one of those that when they introduced, I was like, ooh, this is going to be really good.
And I agree with everything you just said there, but I also think there is that other possibility that what if this going on, and because Batgirl with Birds of Prey and with this is obviously going to be involved because she's one of Batman's go-to people, is she going to be pulled into helping out with this to help save her dad? And this is going to allow James Jr. the opportunity to take advantage of focus being diverted elsewhere, where he isn't necessarily part of the court, but he's taking advantage of what the court's doing.
When the bat's away, the mice will play.
Yeah. Or he could be a part of it. I don't know. I love that. That, to me, is super cool. That
Definitely.
You don't know what's going to happen, that there's a lot of variables there. But that's a great example of a title that is, I think, organically entering into this. And for readers who are enjoying that title, you're like, wow, this event's happening in Gotham. It would be widespread in its effect. I'm choosing to look at this event, and I don't know if you're reading this the same way. The main title that is going to be telling the story of this is going to be Batman. The other titles that are involved in this, maybe including Detective Comics and Batman and Robin, are going to be, and I might be wrong on that because they're both involving Bruce, so they might be deeper into the main story. But I'm guessing, at the very least, either Batman and the two other Batman books are going to be telling the main story. But then things like Nightwing and Batgirl and things like that are going to tell the story in a way that it affects those particular characters. What we've already been seeing from Nightwing. Like, you don't need to be reading Batman to understand what's going on in Nightwing, but if you're reading both books, that the connection between the two and where they do converge is heck yeah cool. I mean, why not? How awesome is that? I love that the writers have coordinated in that way. I think that these books are going to organically connect where they're supposed to, but you don't have to be reading all of them. But if you are, as a fan who's reading all of them, you're going to get the whole story, like a bigger picture of the whole story and how encompassing it is. Are you reading this that way?
Yeah, I'm seeing it where each book is going to have their own Court of Owls involvement and dealings. I don't think we're going to have part 1 in this title, part 2 in this title, part 3 in that title. But each title will be affected by it. The Batman titles will have a much deeper effect to it, whereas the others look like they're going to be the supporting, the extra little add-ons to the story.
See, to me, one thing I've always loved about the character of Bruce Wayne, and when he's handled well, is when this man is hit down to his farthest, he finds a way to rise up and to overcome. When he brings in the members of his team, or Alfred in this case brings in the members of his team, he becomes the leader of that group. The shining example of that group, where they all step up a little more because of their relationship with Bruce. And when he starts utilizing them properly and their skill sets, because each of them brings something unique to the table. When he starts using their skill sets, they enhance him as well. It's that symbiotic relationship that he has with those partners that he's developed over the years, whether he's wanted to develop them over the years or they've just kind of said, hey, I'm operating here anyway, like a Barbara Gordon.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, there's something cool about that kind of relationship. I've got to say, this Batman title right now, I know I flip-flop at times where I'm like, oh, this one's my favorite one, that one's my favorite one. Scott Snyder, to me, just really is an immense writing talent. DC's got a great talent pool of writers right now. I just really think that they're just great, great writers. This Batman book is incredibly satisfying for me. My top 2 favorite books right now at DC that they're publishing right now, I have no hands-down hesitation in saying this. It's Batman #1 and Batgirl #2. Those are my top 2 favorite books right now. And there's a lot of books I have a tough time not throwing in there. But when I keep going across my list, I have to say I've got a lot of Batman family filling in those other blocks. Duke, because they're all really, really good. You can't. Nightwing has been so great. But this Batman book, the reason why is this Night of Owls storyline is just what Snyder did in his Detective Comics run with that Black Mirror thing. This guy just kicked off the history that he did in the miniseries of Gotham. I think just so totally has built, not I think, we know is so totally built into this. It gave this concept of power player families and a rich history of things that have happened that this Court of Owls is really attacking that structure, that infrastructure of what is power in Gotham in this. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. This has been one of those laid out stories that are just getting fleshed out, and each piece adds to, it's a building process. And this is something they started teasing a long time ago. They started teasing with the laying some groundwork down on the Gates of Gotham, miniseries, and just I'm loving the fact that this has been a solid team effort. There are the leaders of the stories. There are the main storytellers of it, but this is a process where all of the Bat families, all of the associated books, all of the people who are touching and dealing with Bruce Wayne and or Gotham are getting involved with this. This is one of those crossover events that it's not an official, DC event, Court of Owls. It's part of a story being told within the individual titles, but it does have that massive universal event feel.
No,
and it's
Jim, you're wrong. Jim, I got to stop you there. This is actually being billed as the New 52's first event. This is actually being billed as a event. It's not being billed as kind of a... I mean, I get what you're saying, and right. It's organically playing out that way. But, I mean, one of the things that... This is the first time that since the New 52 is launched that they have labeled anything as a event.
Yeah. Let me clarify what I say when I'm saying event. Because in my head, when I say event, I'm saying... where you have Court of Owls issue #1, a side, story arc going on, a side, mini series going on that has that name carried to it, like Flashpoint. You had the Flashpoint event where you had the Flashpoint issues, but you had the other titles that were all affecting with it, and the other stuff that fleshed out the Flashpoint universe.
This is going to be that.
But there's not going to be a Court of Owls or Night of Owls, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3 like that. These are going to be told within the DCU titles. So that's why You're saying that because there's not a separate mystery, but a miniseries to this. But this is going to be. I'm looking at this like the Sinestro Corps War. Exactly.
So that's an event.
That's one of the things I loved about Sinestro Corps War was that it was this universally expanding thing, but it didn't have that set. Right here, you have to get this issue. They didn't worry about saying, will this, if you get, if I just get the miniseries, will I get enough? Well, yeah, but here's the add-ons. This one, they're saying they're telling the story in here. If you're reading Batman, continue reading Batman. If you're only reading Nightwing, continue reading Nightwing.
Yeah.
But if you want to get everything, and you'll see all these other casts, all these other characters affecting and dealing with it. It's it's that magnitude as a DC, and it is an event, but it's not what I would call a quote unquote traditional event. It's something beyond that. It's letting the creative teams, letting these this talent do what they do.
See, I thought Flashpoint was crafted that way. I don't know. I guess I totally read Flashpoint. See. Green Lantern, I think Sinestro Corps War, you had to read all those titles in order to get the whole story, with the exception of the one-shots, which I thought were add-on material that, like, I fleshed out things. You didn't have to read them, but if you did, you got expanded storytelling. I think this is a lot more, I don't want to say it's a lot more like Flashpoint, because I agree with you on the whole concept. There's no separate miniseries, and I think that's a good idea. I think doing this in the main book, I think it gives some, I think every main book should feel like an event. I'm really glad that they're doing this way, because I do feel like Batman feels like its own event. I'm sure what Tony Daniels is going to do over in Detective Comics is going to feel like its own event. What Peter Tomasi is going to do in Batman and Robin is going to feel like its own event. I'm thinking, at least the way I'm viewing it right now, and it's hard without actually having those issues in front of me to see how they're doing it. I'm guessing, like what you're saying, the meat and potatoes is going to be in Batman. This is going to be the main storyline, how it's going to play out. Detective Comics is going to be its own storyline, echoing and being affected by what's going on in Gotham. It's going to be Tony Daniels' own Detective Comics storyline reaction to all this. Batman and Robin's going to be the same thing. I'm guessing in Nightwing, like you're saying, if you're only reading Nightwing and you're not reading any of the Batman books, you're going to get a complete story in Nightwing. And I like that. But see, I do take that as Flashpoint, because you could really read that whole Aquaman miniseries in Flashpoint, and you got a complete story there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yes and no. You did get an independent story from the Aquaman, and you got a really cool story from the Aquaman story, but you didn't get the overall. I think if you only read Aquaman, you'd be lost as to what actually happened.
Well, I guess you have to read Batman.
Read Nightwing, you're not going to be just lost. You're not going to be lost as to what's going on.
Well, I don't think you're going to know how the whole resolution of the Court of Owls comes about, because that's going to happen in Batman, I'm thinking.
I think we're going to see the resolution from Nightwing's point of view. We're going to see a resolution. I think if you only read Nightwing, for example, I think you will still see and know exactly what happened. If anything, you will see it from Nightwing's point of view. I'm
cool with that. I hope that's what happens.
That's how I'm reading this so far, and how it's laying out, and just the vibe I'm getting from it, especially because there's certain scenes from Batman that are reappearing in each of the other titles, and it's it's the Alfred calling out to all associates, all friends of the Bat. When he's throwing out the call, you get that in every one of those titles, and you get little twists and little variations on it. And then when you read Batman, you see exactly, okay, what's that banging sound in the background? Well, we see it, what the banging is in Batman. But as it's going on, what we got in, say, Red Hood and the Outlaws, what we got in Nightwing, that was a full telling of it.
No, it wasn't. Let us know
what's going on.
No, it wasn't. It was Alfred doing the call out. Now, here's one area where I'm going to disagree with you. If you look at the Red Hood and the Outlaws issue, I thought it was very well handled. It showed you exactly what Jason would know. He doesn't know everything that happened to Batman leading up to it. He doesn't know what exactly is 100% going on with Batman. All they've laid out for you is Gotham is in this state right now. It set a status quo of Gotham, but it did not lay out all of the events. It laid out what Jason would know based on Alfred's call-out, which I really like. Now, I am going to say I agree with you on one thing. I think each of the books that are, connecting titles, I shouldn't use connecting. I use that word very loosely. Each of the books that are echoing or being affected by what's going on in these events, I think the creative teams are going to give us a good beginning, middle, and ending story. I agree with you 110% on that. But I think you're going to get, like in Batgirl, for example, you're going to get a beginning and middle and ending to Batgirl's involvement in this storyline. You aren't going to see Bruce's storyline end in Batgirl unless Barbara's involved in that part of it, which I don't know that she's going to be. She might be. If the way that this all converges at the end is with all of them, then Barbara's end story might happen there. But I think we're going to get the events that make sense. So if you're reading just Batgirl, like you said, you're going to get a good beginning, middle, and ending of the story. But I'm still going to say I believe the main events are going to play out in Batman's book.
Probably. And these are just guesstimations on my part, but I'm thinking just because we have Batman handling things differently now, there's going to be more open communication coming back from Alfred, from Batman to the team as to what's going on. I'm thinking we're going to get extra little clips, little bits here, little bits there, guidance, communication, maneuvering, positioning of people. I think we're going to get in these titles. So I think that's how we're going to find out resolution, how we're going to find out that everything's going good. Now, each person's going to get, their own information based on their level of trust and their level of comfort.
Right.
Barbara Nightwing will get a lot more than Jason. Jason maybe will get a thanks for the help, maybe. Or he'll maybe get a communication from Tim saying, hey, thanks for the help, buddy. Appreciate it. As opposed to something directly from Bruce. Or maybe we will get a direct Bruce to Jason contact, which I think would be kind of neat to see. But I think we're going to see more of the cross communication. And that's something I always say call for backup. Well, we're seeing right here, Batman is calling for backup. And this is what happens when he does call to his team, when he does get the response. And that's something that really has me excited on the Night of Owls and the whole Court of Owls and everything that's going to happen with, the Owls.
See, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we're going to get unnecessary regurgitation in these other titles. What we're going to get is, I think what happened with Nightwing and Batman and how it worked. Remember, there was a rich storyline going on with Haley's Circus in Nightwing. Right. That had a resolution that led Nightwing back to the Batcave. We saw that from Nightwing's perspective, and in a way that it was told completely differently because it made sense. Nightwing was there, and that's how it happened. Those events, when you read them, they're two very different readings of that particular event. And I agree with you. When that's necessary, that'll probably happen in the other titles as well. And the creative teams that are on those titles are going to handle them brilliantly because I'm really loving those creative teams on those books. So they're going to do that. But I don't think what you're going to see, though, is the ending of Bruce's story with the Court of Owls, which I think that is where the end game of this, because it's Snyder's story. I think that's going to play out there. I think what Higgins has been crafting with Nightwing, you're going to see an end game to Nightwing's story in Nightwing, but not necessarily the ending of Bruce's story in Nightwing. In Barbara Gordon's story, you're going to see she's been called in and all this. I don't know that necessarily they're going to all converge at every single point. This is so widespread what the Court of Owls is doing that Barbara's going to have her own missions that she's going to be going on with herself and with the Birds of Prey. Because if you look what's going on in those titles...
Yeah, they're starting to mesh and work together. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, even so, Birds of Prey has its own storyline going on with Barbara having her own storyline going. She's going to be plenty busy without necessarily converging totally in what Batman's doing. I do think that there's probably going to there might be a point in time where Team Batman intersects, but I don't know that necessarily is going to be shown in all the other titles. That might be something that only plays out in Batman.
Oh yeah, I'm. Make sure you understand exactly. I'm not saying we're going to get a full regurgitation because we got a cool way they handled it in Nightwing and Batman. I liked seeing that. But I'm just saying I think we're going to get just more communication, more interaction. It's going to be across the titles, interaction and dealings and appearances and whatnot. I'm not saying regurgitation, but I still think just the way it's looking, the way they're handling the Bat family, the way these creative teams are working together, we're going to get resolution. We're going to know what actually happened. And it may not be full detail. It won't be a regurgitation probably, but I still think somehow we're going to find out. I think it's just more of a communication and an open dialogue and just an interactions that the creative teams are creating more of a family environment, more of a team dynamic, while retaining their individual creativity.
See, well, that's exactly right. See, I'm gonna and let me clarify what happened with Nightwing and Batman. I didn't consider regurgitation. I considered that echoing. Huge difference. Echoing is where, each creative team is in their own way presenting their full, complete story. Because these events make sense to intersect, we showed it from different perspectives. But I think the resolution, for example, of how Red Hood and the Outlaws, let's use them for an example. I don't know how in league with the team Jason's going to become. I thought the ending of the most recent Red Hood and the Outlaws, issue number 8, showed a relationship between Jason and Tim that I did not realize was existing. It's showing something different in the New 52. I really like that. If anything, that's a book where by issue 8 right now, I'm a big Red Hood and the Outlaws fan. That book has become a whole heap of fun. I also love that it does remind us Jason was a Robin. And there is that part of himself that even though he's mad at Bruce, when he has these moments with Tim and the two of them are able to sit down and have breakfast together, there is that guy who still is the person who was a Robin. And I think sometimes that part forgets to be shown in his anger and bitterness over what happened to himself. Like, okay, you're killed by the Joker, and you're hit by, repeatedly by a crowbar and stuff like that, and you die, and you come back to life, and you find out that your father, or the father, foster father figure that you had, didn't avenge you, or at least the way that you think you should be avenged. That psychologically is going to screw with you. But this is still a guy who was a Robin.
Yeah. And I liked seeing the fact that it was Tim who has that better relationship with Jason, because it's that whole, Dick Grayson would have been a little bit too close to the animosity, a little bit too close to the hatred, to the anger, but it's Tim. Tim is that, he's got that presence, that connection, that little brother type of feel. He's got that friend type of feel, and I was glad to see that it was, he's able to, just have the moment with Jason. Able to get Jason to take off the hood, to sit down and have breakfast with him, and just, and even Tim was the one who talked Jason, probably you can say talked him into it or convinced him, or it was, Tim's presence saying, hey, we could use your hand here, man. It was that little bit reaching out to him that pulled him in. So I was so glad that it was, the Tim character who's able to do it, because Tim is awesome.
Dude, what's going on behind you? It sounds like you got helicopters or tanks or something coming in. Are you being assaulted, or what's going on? Like, we finally found him. We're shutting him down.
Hold him off.
He's talking comics. Let's get him. What's going on?
Oh, that is a lawnmower.
That's a lawnmower?
Yes.
What are they driving? A tank? We're gonna
it's a souped up lawnmower.
Yeah,
I got Tim Taylor next door.
Yeah. Jeez, we're going to make sure when we're done, there's no lawn. I was listening to that back there. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it got worse as it was going along. And it did to me, it almost sounded like either helicopters or a tank was coming in.
Well, I got the little patch of grass right between my house and my neighbor's house.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear that real sound, that's when they're mowing that part of the lawn.
Do they want to mow it once a summer? Is that why they're using that kind of a lawnmower, or what? I mean, let's really get it. Let's beat that grass back so it knows who's boss. I mean,
and it's just the untuned up lawnmower, so it's really loud. And
so we need to get them a spark plug. Is that what you're saying?
I'll just go through and I'm going to pimp their ride. I'm going to pimp out the the lawnmower.
Oh, soup it up with it has bouncing wheels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Neon.
Actually, I'm thinking doing an electric motor so it doesn't make any sound.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to be honest with you, kind of in an insane way. I want to do that to my lawnmower, the bouncing wheels and the neon. I don't think it'd be very effective, but it'd be cool.
Oh, hey, that would look awesome.
Yeah. My neighbors would talk, but... All right, back to the Night of Owls. The Red Hood is a great example, though, where his whole storyline and his looking at his past and how, he became part of that group to try and make things better, but then his own bitterness and need for revenge led him on a different path again, was something that I found very interesting. I'm glad that book is showing that Jason still has a conscience in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that book's really started to grow on me along the way as we've gotten to know them. And I will say this, I'm completely convinced now if that book didn't have the opening and intro that it did, I wouldn't care as much now. This built slowly as we got to know them. And we're at a point right now where Alfred's doing the call-out, and Jason listening to that call-out makes sense to me now. It wouldn't have in issue 1. It does by issue 8. Which I think is great development for that book. That now I'm in a very different place. Because tell me in issue 1 that wouldn't have felt out of place.
Yeah, big time. Because issue 1, Jason would have just, as soon as you heard Alfred's voice, just changed the channel. And not actually sat down and listened. But this Jason, we're seeing more of the the component that made him a Robin, that made him a good guy. Now, it's funny we're saying that, but in issue 8, he did, put a bullet in someone's head. So he's not clean-cut Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson or Tim Drake. He's not that, he doesn't follow the code of the Bat. He still is Red Hood, but there is still that character. There is still the hero aspect of him. There is still that good in him.
And see, that's one of the things that I like about this storyline is we're going to see this storyline from his perspective, which I guess is what you're saying. I guess that's what I'm saying, though. I don't think we're going to see a regurgitation. We're going to see a Red Hood and the Outlaws story set in this world. So maybe we are saying the same things. It's just, I guess I want to make it really clear to listeners that I see this as being, if we happen to see any events repeated in any of these titles, the way I look at it as they're going to be events that would make sense for these characters to witness or to be a part of. And they're going to be told from a completely different perspective. Like, I think the template of what this is going to look like is what Nightwing and Batman have done so far. I think this is going to be the kind of tight editorial and creative partnering that we've seen in those two books. I think what Higgins and Snyder did there has been brilliant so far. And just knowing the creative talents that are involved in all the other titles, I think we're going to be seeing that kind of thing. That's my hope. I'm speculating, just like anybody else would be on this, but that's what I want to see out of this. So if you're not reading everything, great. You can still get satisfying storytelling, but if you are reading everything, you're just going to see like the whole big picture of like how it affects every character who ever has been associated with Batman in a way that I love. The All Call. The All Call to me was fantastic.
God,
yeah. And I love that it was Alfred that did it.
Yeah. Well, it's the team dynamic. Bruce was armoring up. He was getting ready to deal with the Talons in the house. And I love the fact that it wasn't just one Talon coming after Bruce. They sent a wave just to make sure that, he went down, because the Wayne family is a huge target. So we're going to send a couple. And then all of a sudden they stumble on this little way. Look here, little surprise. We got the Batcave right in Wayne Manor. And I loved seeing that play out as they started realizing who they're going up against.
Right. A book I want to see how he's going to be brought in is Batwing.
Oh, yeah.
How does the end of issue 8 going to play out that Batwing's becomes involved? Because his storyline resolves at the end of issue 8. Go ahead.
Well, he was in Gotham already, and he went from Gotham to Justice League International, where he helped out, where he's helping out the JLI. So he's in the area. He's not in Africa right now. So when the all call goes out from Alfred, he's nearby. He could very easily respond.
Yeah, and I like that. I love that the storyline kind of organically led there. That makes sense, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a book I'm really digging.
Oh, big time. Yeah, that's another where the last issue they had, Bruce in there, they had Tim and Dick in there, and they had a full cast of characters, but it's still focused on Batwing. It's still focused on his life, where he was going, what he was doing, and it was they had the guest appearances, but they didn't overpower. This was still a Batwing book, and that's something that when you have guest appearances by really big names, by really main characters in the Bat family, they can end up stealing the show, but they didn't let that happen in Batwing. Batwing was still the main focus, his life, his story, his history.
No, it would have been a huge mistake to make them the focus. I'm with you on that. That was handled very, very well. Because you always want him to be the star of his own book. Batwoman does that very well, too.
Yes.
Like when Bruce makes appearances in Batwoman, or has made appearances in Batwoman, he doesn't overshadow her. He is a presence, and it affects her, but she's still the lead character. And I think that's very important in a character's own title. Because once you let them become a supporting cast member in their own title, you start diminishing the character.
Now one of the things I got to comment on, just the little extra little gadgets and little gizmos throughout the manor that Bruce had, where he had the contact lenses in that allowed him, visual and communication with the Bat, with the Bat computer. He had the escape hatch that went from his, the roof all the way down through to the cave, the various other hidden passageways and panels and whatnot. I always like seeing stuff like that in preparation, that Bruce has thought about this. Okay, what if I'm on the top of the house, and I need to get down to the cave? I need an express route right here. Okay, well, what about this? I need this. What about this? And I love seeing the fact that he did think of these things.
One of the things I like, too, is I love that he's looking at the city of Gotham. I love those dark, introspective moments. How he prefers the dark even when he's in his own house. There's something about those moments where it gives him like a silence and a solace and just kind of no distractions. He's focusing on the city, reflecting on his own decisions. Then when that thing lights up, it's hurting his eyes, obviously, because of what he's been through. But it's never for me. I know there was a secondary reason why he had the room dark, but that's very normal for Bruce to be sitting there in the dark. That's not an abnormal thing for him. I love that the events that happened to him with the Court of Owls had so affected him that he's still recovering from that. Sometimes we forget that when you've got a human character, it's important to show some signs of recovery, some signs of weakness because of what they've been through, and that they somehow have to compensate for that. This was great in this. I eat that stuff up. What a great build. I thought, to speak on the coloring too, when you put a glowing effect and you do shadow effects, and they're not just on the main character, but they're reflective of pedestals and picture frames and just different things that you have on the floor, and you're seeing those shadows being cast all over a room from a light source. I'm just endlessly impressed by that. I know that comes from the penciling and the coloring put together. They have moments in this where there's window reflection effects and effects of lighting across eyes. And I was taking pictures last night. We were on the top of a building, a penthouse, looking over downtown Cleveland. And at nighttime, I was trying to take pictures outside because the night sky was absolutely beautiful. But, you've got to deal with the fact that there's window glass there and the reflection of the interior lighting off of the window glass. I'm seeing this book now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they've got that. This is exactly what it looks like from a window with interior reflections coming through, and we're seeing this in this issue done by hand. I just think, the whole creative team, for artwork-wise, deserves kudos for that because it added a realistic effect to this. Because Bruce is talking about his own arrogance, which is something that is a quality that Bruce has. He has an arrogant quality. He's so convinced himself that he knows best. And that he has known this city better than anybody does, and it's his city, and it's his way, to the point where he will kick out people who are trying to operate in his city in a way that does not fit his ideals for the direction he wants for Gotham. And Alfred's coming back to him with that line, one of my favorite lines, perhaps, but then you come from a long line of such men, sir, and that city across the bay is a better place for all of their arrogant foolishness. Why that means so much to me is we saw through the history of Gotham, through the bridges and that whole storyline event, just how these men have shaped and crafted and improved this city, this very dark city, and made it into something more. Such a powerful line that I think is made richer by recent storytelling that has just shown the great, and Bruce's own storytelling of traveling through time as well.
Yeah.
So there's so much rich storytelling of the past of Gotham that I think has played into setting up the mood and the tone for all this, that it's not just this event, it's everything leading up to it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the one thing I was going to say, when all this stuff was playing out, last year, throughout the year, where we're getting all these glimpses of Bruce's past, of his family's past, of their dealings with Gotham, the one thing that always just stood out in my head was every Wayne descendant was the good guy. Every Wayne descendant was always there on the positive side of Gotham. Even the ones who inadvertently helped the Court of Owls, they're still good people who were, tricked, manipulated, driven crazy and whatnot. But they were still either who they are was still a decent person. And it kind of, when I was reading it initially, I was kind of like, I kind of wondered, part of me wanted there to be the black sheep in the closet, there to be the skeletons, to be that little part of the Wayne family that people didn't talk about. And seeing this, though, play out, seeing how this plays out, I really am glad there wasn't. I'm really glad that every generation of Wayne always had two things in common. They had a lot of money, but they were decent people who tried to help Gotham, who tried to help the people of Gotham live a better life. And it's just the continuation of the legacy, the continuation of the Wayne family. And this was kind of like this one issue here was one of those moments where I was really glad to see all that we did in the past. See all the stuff that before I was kind of like, do we have to really make everybody a good guy? Now I'm seeing, yes, we did have to make everybody a good guy because this is who he is. This is his foundation. This is the rock that is, the Wayne family. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's something I'm really, really enjoying too, is the fact that this book has that kind of feel of things make sense. How they're crafted, how the history has led to what we're going to here. I love seeing, going back to that sequence we were talking about in the dark room, I love when the alarm gets tripped. They're mid-thought, you hear this thump, and when I say the alarm, it's more of I just know that there's things. It kind of ties in when we were talking about Nightfall, how Bruce has that awareness kind of thing. You hear this thump, and the two of them showing their own training that, hey, we've got intruders coming here. We don't have time for this. And the court is coming after him. Not just one member, multiple members of the court. Now, how this is important is, look at the trouble he had the first time through with one of them. Now he's dealing with multiple members of them. This is Batman at his best. This is stuff that I just, I eat up with pure pleasure. Combat. Bruce, whether he's in the costume or not. In Night's End, what did I love so much? We saw Bruce in that ninja costume fighting, where we see that it's not the bat suit, it's not the gadgets, it's the man doing the fighting. We're seeing a bandaged Bruce fighting in his robe and pajama pants. I mean, analyzing the style of the court. Maybe so. You have skills, maybe I have skills, but yours went out of style 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Fighting over banisters. Again, this is taking full advantage, the creative team, of the fact that we're fighting in a mansion. There's going to be multiple floors, multiple layers. This should be a video game. I would love to play a video game, a combat fighting video game, of Batman going up against the Court of Owls, where you have different floors in the Wayne Manor where you can knock enemies to the lower floor and fight that way, and have Batman in different outfits.
Yeah. It's the scrambling, using the environment, using the television antenna, to smash the one dude's sword, and then using part of the banister to bash another one's head in. I loved seeing just that improvisational fighting style as well.
Absolutely. Going outside windows and utilizing the roof. This is his home. He knows his home better than anybody else. We've got a guy in his bare feet having to avoid broken glass from windows, splinters on the floor, trying to. But you're actually seeing what looks like on his foot blood splatter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from the fact that he's stepping on things that these guys have footwear, he does not. I love, to me, though, the acrobatic flow. A lot of times we talk about the acrobatic nature of Dick Grayson. I remember growing up, some of my favorite Jim Aparo artwork was of his flow of Batman when he's floating with his cape doing kicks and punches and things like that. The acrobatic nature of Bruce. He has those skill sets. Pulling himself through the window up to the roof like he did, in that it's like poetry in motion. But he goes right into a kick because it's not one member of the court. There's multiple huge amounts of members. I remember seeing this cover months ago because the source teased this cover. Oh my gosh, does it mean more now?
Yeah. Oh, definite. And it's funny, you talk about just the cuts on the feet and stuff like that. that was something with when I was looking at the artwork. Because I do my read-through, my first read-through where I'm reading the story, then I do my second read-through, which is the art read-through, where I'm just looking at the images. Those were stuff that I noticed on the second read-through. Because I was so caught up in the action, caught up in the adventure, that I missed little bits, and that got me thinking, again, the same thing you were saying, just with splinters and broken glass and whatnot, and just everything that could possibly be on the floor. I don't know about you, middle of the night, I get up, I walk across the room and I stub my toe or I step on something, I'm down for the count for a good 15, 20 minutes crying like a little baby. This man's stepping on glass, cutting and fighting, and it's not even phasing him. It's one of those things that just makes Batman Batman. But I'm glad they acknowledge the fact that there is something beyond what, us normal people could go through.
Is it arrogance to have a wind vane with a bat on it? You see that up there?
Yeah.
How great is that? To me, I don't know, if you're trying to hide being Batman, might not be the best idea in the world, but I loved how it was used.
Yeah.
The guy's like, we'll follow you wherever you go. And shove this right through. Now, they don't know that he's... Am I right? They don't know that he's Batman yet?
At that point in time, they didn't. It wasn't until the first one went down into the cave that he's like, whoa, what do we have here? And Bruce, you have been keeping a little secret. And and as soon as they started seeing the Batcave there and they started seeing Bruce's fighting style, that completely eliminated any doubt. So the court now knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, which is going to again lead to something kind of interesting for Bruce.
Now, when he's sliding down that tube, stupid Bruce, stupid. You should have seen this coming. You should have been watching for it, not lost in your own head. When he's going down there, I love that.
Yeah.
To me, I love the arrogance of Batman. I love the strategist of Batman. I love when we see him on the Justice League and he's in that kind of role. I love when we see him with his own team. But I also love when we get to see the other well-rounded side, the human side of him, that he doesn't show to others, that we as the reader get to glimpse. These are moments that, to me, I connect with him and start going, this is where, Bruce is my friend. This is Bruce, that my buddy. He'd never tell me this, but but that internal dialogue are things. I think we all have things because we want to come from a point of strength that we hide from others. Because you don't want them to sometimes see your vulnerability. I'm not saying we do it on the level that Batman does. Eventually we crack and tell other people as we should. But I think that's one of Bruce's psychoses. He doesn't crack very often.
Yeah, he kind of buries a lot of stuff, which gets him into trouble. You got to express yourself a little bit more.
Is it me, or when you see this guy fighting it out, this reminds me of, do you remember Wolverine #1, where you saw him with all the ninjas on the cover?
Yeah.
This reminds me of that. There's something stronger about Bruce when you're seeing him fighting without the bat suit on,
definitely.
this. And he's still, he's not taken aback by it. He's not overcome by it. And his focus on, I've got to save Alfred. He's not worried about his identity. He's worried about Alfred. It's his first concern when he comes down is, it's not, I've got to get a bat suit on. Alfred, are you all right? That to me is, I'm like, okay, great writing. Because this is his father figure. This man has raised him since he was a child. We've got assassins that are coming down here. Any split-second focus on anything else but Alfred, and this guy could wind up dying.
Yeah.
But I love that Alfred actually is defending himself using the giant penny. What a great
lucky
moment.
penny, sir.
Such a great moment.
Oh, God. And again, it's... drops the penny on him. Bruce takes the gauntlet and is able to download, and they're able to hack it and find out what exactly the court's doing. Once it's boom, 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 just the continuation of it. They don't hang back. It's not, okay, let's catch our breath. No, they're both firing on equal cylinders. I love that about Alfred. Granted, if Bruce hadn't been there to deal with the others, if they didn't get to the armory, Alfred would be dead. Alfred's tough, but he can't take down the full court. But there's still that part of him that does show why he's around, why he's important. He's not just the father figure. He is a confidant. He is part of the team Batman. He is part of the the overall program. And I love seeing Alfred prove his worth as well.
I love the smile Bruce gives him with the little, "You're lucky penny, sir." Are you all right?
Yeah.
Just that moment where it's, for Bruce, that's relief, but it's also that buddy cop camaraderie kind of stuff. I get into that. That's action film, great action film to the T. Then right back to business. The breaking of the arm, in that moment where, like, these are guys that should, are dead, should be long since dead. He knows this, and it's like, I've got to get information at this point. But he also knows, I've got to figure out numbers. I've got to figure out endgame. I've got to figure out strategy here. I need what Batman always needs, and that's information. Terrific.
Now, here's something I was thinking about. With all of these talons, with all of these creatures that are dead, the Bat Code, the non-kill code, the non-destruction code, and does it still apply to these guys, or can he just open up and start hacking heads?
I don't know. That's a real good question.
Because you see him dealing with the guy trapped under the penny, but he doesn't, like, lop the dude's head off when he knows he's not going to get any information. He still kind of leaves him lie. Now, I'm assuming when Damian goes to town on these guys, he's not going to be holding back because these guys are already dead. But what about the others? Where is that going to happen? What's going to be the Bruce? That was the first thing that popped in my head with this. When you start looking at, when we found out what the Court of Owls, what the Talons were. This is reanimated dead flesh that is, being utilized as assassins, as killing machines for the Court of Owls. I want to know exactly what's going to be the Batman protocol, and is this going to be? And the other question that was flying through my head, and it still is, what happens to the secret identity?
Well, it all depends on how the information's relayed.
Yeah.
Because so far the information's contained.
Yeah, within just the owls that are in Wayne Manor.
Right.
Now, who knows if they already have an open, what kind of communication lines do the Talons have? Well, do they have, radio contact with the main base? Is it back to the nest saying, hey, Bruce Wayne's Batman?
Well, that's the thing for me. I don't know. The connection there is what's really, I don't know. Those are the questions. Your question about the code is something I'm questioning as well. How does it apply here? I don't know. I can see both sides of it because clearly the one whose army broke has, sentience and a personality and everything. So what is alive? And what does Bruce determine as being alive? I don't know. That's what's really going to be the question here is, how do we consider this? I don't know. I don't know the answer. And, we already know Bruce won't kill people to keep the secret.
Right.
I love the whole going into the panic room to regroup because you need to at this point. Overwhelming numbers. Bruce has tried to gather information, doesn't have quite enough information yet. I love the Court of Owls is like, let's free as many of our brothers as we can. The one that was Bruce had captured.
Yeah.
And because we do not want to give him anything he can use. Let's go after our objective. I don't know, that's something that's interesting. But then when that door opens up and he's got that suit, I knew something was going to come out. I cannot wait to see that, how that's going to play out. Here's the thing that I loved. I forgot this book had a backup story. I totally forgot about this. All of a sudden you turn the page and we get to see this initial battle. This battle was really important because what they did was it's great pacing. You've got Bruce busy, doing what he does best, fighting. But you've got Alfred realizing that I've got to download this list that Bruce is mentioning. They were talking about how we've got targets more than you. Forget about how many are coming for you. It's how many are coming in general. And who are we going after? They're going after everybody from Jeremiah Arkham to Jim Gordon, every major player. They're going after Mr. Freeze, Lucius Fox, Penguin, which Penguin's going to be how Catwoman's brought into all this because she's going after the Penguin right now for that extra knife.
Right.
Which
surprise.
Oh, yeah. And I do want to talk a little bit about Catwoman before this wraps up, and I want to talk about Birds of Prey a little bit before this wraps up because they're two great books that their events are kind of converging into all this because of circumstance. But I'm really enjoying both of those books as well. But we've got particular reasons as to why the Gotham Public Advocate. It's everybody who's a major player in the city and can do anything positive for the city. They're taking out so they can set up their own infrastructure. It's a brilliant strategy. And one that I don't think that they had planned on doing now, they're putting into place now because of the fact that they've been hidden for so long, and Batman's now aware of them, right? Or is that how you're reading this? That the Court of Owls is stepping up their game now because Batman knows about them, and they're like, we are not going to give anybody an opportunity to build an offensive against us, or even a defense against us. We're going to stomp everyone out because this has been years in the planning, a lifetime in the planning of us being puppet masters. Now we have to go public, right?
See, I took it more of the Batman Inc. It wasn't the fact that Batman found out about him, but it was because, Batman Inc. was forming, because the heroes were coming about more and getting more popularity. They knew they had to strike now before it became too late.
Okay.
So I'm thinking they always had plans to have this attack at this point in time. It wasn't, the only reason why Batman got involved with it was because Batman started identifying them. So then they're like, okay, let's assess the Batman, let's bring him in, and you have that cool story in Detective where they're really, breaking down the psychologically and just, everything they did to Bruce throughout that story. But the whole time they always had this night planned. So this, Night of the Owls has been planned, probably for a while now.
Well, that makes sense because they started operating more aggressively. That was how Batman became aware of them,
right.
And which led him to be and Bruce Wayne being attacked right now was because of the fact that Bruce is on the list.
Yeah.
Interesting they sent so many after Bruce.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of with Bruce is because he's a financial sponsor for Batman. So they probably figured if he's the financial sponsor for Batman, he's got some hardware. He's got something. Plus, Bruce Wayne, it's with Wayne Tech, and they probably figured, okay, there's probably something more going on. They never thought that Bruce was Batman, but they figured there's probably going to be some support there. There's going to be some type of security or something we'll have to work through. So they sent a heavy barrage. Plus, the Waynes do have the direct connection to opposing the Court of Owls because of Alan Wayne and everything he went through. So it could just be let's do overkill here and make sure we destroy this family completely.
It's the same reason they're going after Cobblepot.
Right.
Wayne being attacked makes sense. It has to do with, I really do believe he's an influential money player in Gotham.
Right.
And he has
makes sense.
Right. So I mean there's definitely a clear reason there. Now,
and they know there's no way they're going to buy off the Wayne family, which makes me wonder why they don't try to buy off Cobblepot. Why would they not want, Cobblepot around? Why spend the effort? I would have done a offer to join and or be a part of the Court of Owls and then double cross them at the last minute.
Why do that when you can stomp them out altogether and you don't have to double cross anybody? You can just have your own agenda from the get-go. They aren't thinking about making allies. They are thinking about stomping out opposition. You're thinking that they need to make allies. They're thinking they don't need allies.
Right.
They're thinking, let's stomp out any potential resistance.
Okay. I can buy that. I can buy that completely.
So why are they going after Cobblepot? Because he's potential resistance. And believe me, after they get all these other people, guess who else they're going to go after? Probably every villain and outlaw in Gotham who would potentially get in their way.
Yeah.
Attack the infrastructure first, gain a position of power, and take out any further opposition. It will not stop at this list. This list is the start to take over power. So they aren't looking to make allies with anybody, which is why I'm wondering how James Jr. plays into this. Unless there's something we don't know about James Jr.'s history.
Yeah, unless he is a part of the Court of Owls.
In which case, is he part of going after Dad then? I don't know.
Right. Which definitely could be, or could he have been a possible failed Talon, or could it be, what's the connection there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question that we're going to have to find out.
Yeah. Yep. Something from the backup that I really like seeing.
Mm-hmm.
They talked in the main title about one of the ways to combat the Talons is by core body temperature and dropping the temperature down in the cave, and just a way to deal with it and slow down the healing process, slow down the synapses firing. And you see by the end of when Alfred's giving out his broadcast, he's bundling up his coat and he's getting colder in there because they've already started dropping the temperature down. One of the reasons Bruce armored up was because he needed, the protection from the elements and protection from the temperature drop. And I like just that little attention to detail that Alfred's going to be getting colder.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those were things that were really, really important in this as well. I also want to, I was talking about how Alfred was the one that took the initiative to put out the call, but it wasn't really Alfred. Alfred was the one telling Bruce what was going on. I love that it was Bruce who, recognized that he needed to snap Alfred back. Alfred was actually getting overwhelmed by the sheer scope and sequence of all this. This was Bruce kind of snapping back into being Batman again. This is the Bruce that went down the chute and said, "Stupid, stupid Bruce. I've been focused on other things when I need to focus on being the man." This is the man who's he's come down that chute. His butler's okay now. It's time to get game on.
Yeah.
And the call was one of the things I love because for us as readers, we have not seen Red Robin really heavily addressed with his relationship with the Bat family, other than, appearances here and there. I'm anxious to see Red Robin in this.
Yes, so am I.
But we're going to see Red Hood. We're going to see, obviously, Damian, which I'm assuming Batman and Robin's going to be focused on Damian's role in all this. We're going to see Nightwing, obviously, in his own book, Batgirl, and Birds. Now, this lays out, what we end up seeing echoing in all the other books, that call, that shout-out that's going on, as Batman's still in the fight that we're going to see the end of in the next issue, which is going to lead to a whole bunch of other things. I want to talk a little bit about Catwoman. I have so loved her relationship with Spark.
Yeah. And
how, you can't help but feel like that's going to end horribly wrong. But I love her thinking, this guy's fun. He gets the thrill. It's not just about stealing. It's breaking into places that you're not supposed to be able to break into. It's that these people who've set up these insane security systems and insane protocols, finding a way past them. And how the two of them have found kind of a balance in their relationship where he's able to take out electricity, but she's also the planner that he's not. I've really been enjoying that book in particular, and it's just kind of development of this sense of, not saying that you should want to do what they do, it's, obviously you don't, but an understanding of that they get this kind of twisted pleasure in what they do. And that's something I think it's important to point out, that's a distinction that I just think is really, really important about Catwoman from other members of the Batman universe. And I'm not throwing her in with the Batman family now, because Catwoman is clearly a thief. She's not a member of the Batman family. She has a relationship of sorts with Bruce, although what that relationship is right now is very up in the air. When this Night of Owls thing, this Court of Owls thing plays out, I'm going to be curious to see if she has encounters with Batman and what that's like during all of this. And how Spark's going to, because he's going to have to be involved in all this because he's a partner right now. But I love when they had that situation in her book where Spark had to step up, and make the choice to either help the prostitute or not. Because Catwoman was doing that, she was going to be severely hurt. It looked like, or abducted, or dead. One of those methods, and Catwoman steps in because she used to be in that role, and she does not want to see somebody else victimized that way. And I love that we got to see a side of Spark that he has a code that she does, or at least is willing to back her code. And I'm not quite sure which it is.
Yeah, I don't know if... I think the guy does have a code, and he's not a complete scumbag, but it's a level of bad guy in him. Because, like you said, he is a thief, just like her, and he does have the same type of motivation she has, so there's definitely going to be a double-cross, vibe coming from him that eventually he's going to try to double-cross her or manipulate the situation for his own benefit. But he's not scum. And the one guy who was kidnapping the prostitute, it was very obvious that guy she wasn't going to walk out of that alive, and he was beyond what these two are. These are thieves. They're not murderers. They're not monsters. They're not megalomaniacs trying to conquer the world.
They're in for the thrill.
What they are.
They're in for the thrill.
Yeah. So it's part of that code, but it's not a good guy code, but it is who they are. It's the code of the thief. You know, they're in for the thrill. They're in for the money. They're in for the rush. And yeah, you help out your partner, but there are going to be levels of helping out the partner. Now, if, you know, he's got to choose between his life and Catwoman's life, he's going to choose his life. And you know, that could come down the line very soon, or down the line, or who knows how he's going to deal with the Night Owls. How, you know, he's going to be like, hey, I'm out of here. I'm not a target here. I don't care about Cobblepot. I just want to get the dagger and leave. And will she have that same vibe, or will she be fighting to stop the court? I don't know. I'm curious to see how he's going to deal with the court. I'm really loving her, but I'm really curious about him.
Now, flipping back, I mean, because they're going after Cobblepot for the knife, that's how they're going to get pulled into this storyline. Now, flipping back to Birds of Prey, I do want to talk about the most recent issue of Birds of Prey. We finally got the reveal, because it's been, why is Dinah Lance being hunted? This is Black Canary, you know, and that's one of the things we've been questioned. You know, she's been hunted as a murderer. She has to reveal to her team now that she's not being set up. She killed her husband. Now, I want to know the story.
I know.
And we're jumping from this into, you know, Court of Owls. How is that playing into all this? And here's the question. Did she really kill her husband? Is she justified in killing her husband? I don't know. It's been one of the things that I've been enjoying this series, but one of the things that I've been questioning is I'm like, it's Black Canary. I can't have Black Canary be a killer.
Accidental canary cry?
Yeah, but she's pretty convinced that this isn't, like, she's not screaming accident, she's not crying foul, she's screaming she did it. She's, you know, saying she did it. So I want to know why. I want to know why she feels this way. So, I mean, it could be what you're saying, and she's just taking guilt and responsibility for it, but she's not saying, you know, I accidentally killed him or anything. I don't know. And maybe they'll come back and say that if you're right.
Yeah, it's the Birds of Prey is one that every issue's coming out, I'm getting more and more into it. And I'm really starting to dig just the team dynamics of it. Yeah, Birds had a tough, it was tough for me because I was comparing it to the past stories that I loved so much. And now I'm seeing its own vibe. I'm getting the feel for its own vibe, its own story being told, its own characters, its own portrayal of it. And it's been a great way to just boom, 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 just keeps hitting you and hitting you. Just when you think, okay, yeah, they took out the bad guy. No, we got the wrong one. Oh, and by the way, I am a killer. What? It's, hits you suddenly just out of nowhere. And it's, those shocking endings that are, it's getting me wanting to read more and more Birds of Prey.
One of the books that I want to make sure we wrap up talking about, Jim, and we'll talk about this casually because I want to make sure we address it, though. That great Nightwing issue number 8. And really one of the things that I enjoyed about this so much is that the storytelling and the narrative is being done by William Cobb. And really we're getting a backstory into him, how very similar to his family. He became a performer, in this case for juggling. And, his skill set, which could have led him down a very dark path, and did for a while, led him into the circus world. And it was a chance for him to have a much more legitimate life than he would have had otherwise. But he gets pulled into, obviously, the Court of Owls and looks at, Nightwing's trying to protect the mayor. And the whole Court of Owls sequence leads into Cobb going after Dick Grayson because Dick Grayson is betraying the court and his overall ultimate destiny, right?
Yeah. They got to take down Grayson, and it's, the acknowledgement of the fact that, hey, he was supposed to be one of us.
And that's why his stick was used as a murder weapon initially, right? They're trying to destroy the reputation of Nightwing, and then ultimately destroy Dick Grayson for not going the path that he was ultimately supposed to go, right?
See, I took it they used the stick not to destroy the reputation of Nightwing, but to draw him in. That was the invitation to Nightwing, saying, okay, it's time for you to go down.
Yeah.
This is us throwing down the gauntlet. This is us challenging you by using his stick to kill somebody. That's going to bring him in, and it's kind of the, this is how, because there's not a heavy media blitz surrounding the usage of the stick. in the death of somebody. And that was something that he noticed, saying, hey, what's going on here? Well, the court has a lot of influence. They have control over stuff like that, so they didn't want people to know about it. They wanted him to know about it. They wanted to know, okay, we're coming after you now.
I love the way that the ending of this issue plays out with Cobb using the throwing knives like he did back in his circus days.
Yes.
I wonder how this is going to play out with Cobb. What Cobb's going to do in the end. Is this man have any kind of family loyalty? And if he does, is that going to play out? Are these Talons that loyal that they will ultimately turn on family, or will Grayson be able to somehow reach him? I can't help but wonder that.
Yeah, how much of the person's still in there? And to me, it sounds like the Owl's full-on turn. I don't know if you can save the person, pull the person back, because it's not just the fact that dead reanimated flesh. This has been, you think about the overall process of the breaking of the person and getting them loyal to the Owls, getting them loyal to the court, and everything where it came from. That, they really just dark and twisted in the soul. It's a full-on mind control.
So I guess my question is, when we take a look at that, is he going to have any? Because he's aware that is his grandson, and that he considers what the grandson doing is betrayal. So there sounds like there's an emotional, right?
Yeah.
Because this betrayal takes everything I sacrificed and makes it worthless. This betrayal is from my own descendant, which is why I, William Cobb, am here to kill Richard Grayson. So is that what he's saying? What he worked towards? Is it the better lifestyle that he worked towards? I don't know.
See, you think about everything that he did and everything he went through. He's seeing, and this is probably the court has twisted his mind, thinking that all of this good stuff that happened to you, the woman, the children and whatnot, everything that happened, from this life that led him into being a Talon was because of the court. And Grayson, by going against the court, is trying to undo that, is undoing the reputation that Cobb built. There's going to be a little bit more that comes out of this that, where does the name go from Cobb to Grayson? There's still another story to be told in his backstory as to where it goes and what happens.
Yeah, the whole thing is very interesting to me.
This is just the opening part of the story. We still have more William Cobb stories to come down the line.
Oh, we have to.
Well, I'm wondering, with how he meets and falls in love with the young lady, and obviously that's going to be, his grandmother, but is he around for the raising of the kids? Is he around for everything that goes beyond that?
Yeah.
How does she become a Flying Grayson? Or is she the first of the Flying Graysons? Where does it go from there? And I think that's where everything takes the turn.
Right. But it says right now the next issue features the Graysons of Gotham. So, I can't wait to see where this is going to go. I got to compliment the artwork. I love Eddie Barrows. And just the coloring, everything is just terrific on this. The cover by Eddie Barrows and Rod Reis, and I apologize for name butchery there because I think the color works terrific. Ree Jose and Eber Ferreira on inks. I'm just totally butchering it. The art team is just terrific. I just think that this book... But this is another one where lettering in those story balloons, the narrative balloons that are going through, was really, really important to me because it built a sense of this is something different. This is a dark narrative. It's an intense narrative that's going through. Lettering stood out for me in this issue, which it doesn't always, and I don't mean that as a knock on letterers. Sometimes it's not supposed to. In this one, it needed to. And I think letterers have to have that interesting talent of knowing when do we need to be in your face and setting a mood and tone, and when do we need to lay back and let the artwork and the dialogue itself set the tone for you. I think that's a very interesting job, and I think letterers have a very strong sense of balance. I think a lot of times their job is one that we forget as readers to acknowledge the importance of, because I think this is a great issue that shows a true talent of it, because there's a nice shift between the internal dialogue of William Cobb and Nightwing that I'm never in this issue unclear of who's speaking.
Oh, definite. Yeah, this was a good, really cool artistical story. And one of the things that we threw out the compliment, but you got to keep doing more compliments on the coloring for this book.
Oh yeah,
Just going through the flashback sequence to present day, broad changes, but within those flashback sequences, it's not as bright and crisp because they want to make it a flashback sequence, but you don't lose the detail. Like the look on Cobb's face when he's throwing the baseball at the guy that just lifted the wallet from the Haley Circus guy. Just that intensity and the focus on him. It's a combination of the arts with the eyeballs, but the coloring on the face. They're still keeping it the flashback sequencing, but there's still the variation, so you can really just see that intensity that he's got going on. And I love seeing stuff like that. Then you go right from that intensity to the next page with Dick Grayson's intensity, where he's got the heavy shadows because he's operating in the darkness, but you don't lose his facial, what is his face. You don't lose that concentration, but he's dealing with heavy shadows, heavy darkness. And I always love looking at, the faces and the focus, and just, you get that emotional response coming from the book. And it's through the coloring. It's through stuff with, as you said, with the lettering, how we're not losing who's saying what through it. It's just this, again, my second art read through was absolutely, I love this book. Because I was getting just like, oh, look at that. That's kind of cool. And it's stuff you miss on your first read through because you're absorbing the whole story and you want to see what happens. You want to, what's coming from the book, but you got to just sit back and enjoy it and take a moment to, enjoy what you're seeing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is one of those story arcs as we are going through, we are going to be discussing as a part of the New 52. I want to cover every issue of this event. I think this event it's one of DC's first, it is the first event of the New 52. I'm a huge Batman junkie, so from a selfish standpoint, I want to cover it. But I'm sure our listenership has to be covering this as well. So now that we're through covering classic material, we're going to really be this summer covering all of the New 52 as we start kicking in, but we're also going to be covering this Night of the Owls event because I am so glued to this. It's going to be a great chance to explore not just the Batman titles proper involving Bruce, Batgirl, Batwing, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Catwoman, just all these titles that are interconnected, and really exploring, how this event's crafted. Do we like the way it's being presented? That's always kind of a fun thing to talk about, our preference on how they do events. You know what?
I'm an idiot. And here's why I'm an idiot.
Okay.
It wasn't until now I just realized something. Cobb's lady friend that he fell in love with, another redhead. What is it with the Grayson family and the redheads? I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I notice that before? I'm kicking myself because I'm like, oh, it's right there in front of me. I'm like, dang it, that's cool.
But is it going to be Dick Grayson's love for a redhead that brings Cobb back to...
Could be.
See, that's what I'm saying. Is Cobb still able to be reached? And I think from this... I guess the internal dialogue of Cobb in this issue has made me see they're not mindless drones. He is able to reflect on his past. He knows who he is. He knows his backstory. He has an emotional connection to that. What does that mean? These are people who actually believe in the cause of the court.
Yeah. But that's the question. Is it they believe in the cause of the court? They are brainwashed to believe in the cause of the court? Where is that final turn, that final twisting? In the prior stuff with Nightwing, with, I can't think of what the bad guy's name was. His circus friend who turned bad, who became his replacement in the Court of Owls.
It was Raymond. His buddy, he thought he died.
Right, exactly. That's, him. We saw with Raymond's, his training, his turning, his torture, when they showed those sequences, it's an intense over multiple periods of time. So it's very easily that he's been, so brainwashed, so pulled into the court that he's sitting there and he's logically thinking. Because we've seen intelligence from them. We've seen planning, strategy, psychological warfare, everything that they've done. So they have their higher brain functions, but they are so convinced the brainwashing is beyond anything that normal brainwashing. Especially, you think about they've had multiple lifetimes of reinforcing the brainwashing. This is, a guy who's 200 some years old, so he's been around for 200 plus years of them reinforcing the Court of the Owls. So he's heavy into believing, and it's not even a convincing. This is how he looks at life now. So I would be very curious to see if Barbara could pull him back, if the fact that the association, the love of the redhead, the strong female, if that could actually have some factor into it.
Cool.
I'm going to need something to wear in a very big truck.
Sure. Anything else?
I'll need some guys. Not these guys, because, well, they're kind of dead.
Jim, our next review is going to be, we're continuing our look at the 4 Vertigo titles that have recently been launched. And this next one we're going to be talking about is Dominique Laveau, Voodoo Child. We're going to talk about issue 2 today. The writer is Selwyn Seifu Hines, and I apologize for any name butchery there. Dennis Cohens is the penciler, John Floyd inker, Clem Robbins letterer, Dave McKeag colorist, John Hughes associate editor, Karen Berger editor, created by Hines and Cohen. This is a series, I've got to be honest with you, I really enjoyed issue 1. Issue 2 was like, whoa, it just really blew me away. Dennis Cohen was the penciler on The Question, a series that is just near and dear to my heart. And to see that artwork back again, but really, I feel like the artwork's totally been modified to this theme of New Orleans and this whole voodoo and magic setting. One of my favorite James Bond movies of all times is Live and Let Die. I love that Roger Moore movie. I love just the whole theme, the voodoo setting and all that. I'm also a fan of Anne Rice's Witching Hour books, that whole series with Lasher and all that. So this setting for me is, and it's a good time for this because I feel like I haven't had anything set like this. I loved books like Shadow Man and Nightman, which was over at Malibu. They all had this kind of setting. So for me right now, this is something I'm like, wow, I've been missing this. I've been lacking this kind of setting, this kind of place. I love magic. I love the whole voodoo vibe. So this was a book I've been highly anticipating, and it really has delivered in the first 2 issues. Those are my thoughts. Where are you at on this one?
I'm pretty much in a very similar boat that you're sitting at right now. It was the thing with me. The difference between 1 and 2 was a really cool. 1 had a lot of bam, bam, bam action moments to draw you in, and then 2 is fleshing out the backstory, but it's doing it in some really cool looking artwork. And it was a kind of a nice way to get you into it, and then keep you locked in deeper and start you just wanting more information, more info, and just wanting the character and just the life to go on and grow, and wondering. It's gotten me thinking off page, and by issue 2, I'm thinking off page. That's a really good usage of just the time and effort that they put into this. And it's funny because you mentioned how the penciler is the same as the Question. Yeah, I was sitting there and I'm looking at this going, man, I was digging the artwork, and I'm trying to figure where I've seen the work before. And I'm like, where did I see this from? And then you mentioned, like, oh, okay, I've seen that stuff then. Alrighty. Because this is some good stuff here that I was like, damn, this is nice. And I like the differences between the past and present, flashback, future, some of the action sequences that we got in issue 1, as well as some of the action sequences in 2. So there's a lot going on, just artistically speaking, and just variations and different styles hitting.
Dominique is kind of our main focal point in this, and one of the things I really like about how this story is being delivered, I feel like we're learning things along with her, which, when you're taking a brand new character and bringing her out there, I'm always a huge fan of that. I feel like we're going along with the ride with Dominique. She doesn't know anything more than we do. So each of our discoveries tend to be things that are fleshing out for Dominique, her role in this world, why these things are happening to her. Because this is a girl who seems to have a fairly normal existence up until the events of issue 1 start unfolding, and her world's like crashing around her. Friends are dying. She's being hunted by these supernatural creatures, and all of these things are a mystery to her, but not to anybody in her family or the powers that be in the New Orleans area. This is really a power play. It's kind of in its own way. It's like a New Orleans mob, of magic and voodoo and things like that, where people are shuffling and vying for power. There's this concept of the voodoo queen, and people who think they should be the voodoo queen or the leader of this area, depending on their, the whole mob mentality with this Lord Ogun and stuff like that that's going on. And then there's the true queen, who we're learning, I guess I might as well just say, because this is revealed in issue 2, it's Dominique. She's the voodoo queen of the area. She doesn't know this, though, and she doesn't know what that means for her. So there's things that are happening to her, powers that are being revealed to her that she's not aware of that she even had. And that's something that I really am finding engaging. I like that because as she's finding things out, we're finding things out. And the pacing, I think, for the first 2 issues has been spectacular because it's not throwing too much at you at once. We're getting to gradually know the characters because it's a deep world with a lot of factions. I still don't feel like I know who everybody is, but I feel that that's the way it's supposed to be. I feel like we're supposed to be gradually learning who the players are in this world and just how tentative their relationships are. So there's something fun about that. And I love that, like, in the end of issue 1, we had Dominique left in a situation where there was this creature hunting her. This is the cowboy with, the guns and everything like that, but that supernatural one who's hunting after her to finish off a job that he tried to finish a lifetime ago. She doesn't know why he's after her. Her aunt, it's the cousin of her real mother, is that right?
It's her aunt, so it's the sister of her real mother.
Who took her under?
Yeah.
Because I thought she was referred to as cousin when in the backstory. So I don't know. I'm with you. There's that kind of relationship, though. She took her and raised her. Oh, that might be what it's the cousin of the. Because there were three girls in the backstory, and it might have been the cousin. You're right. It's the aunt. Okay. No, the aunt's the one who's trying to kill her.
Well, one of the aunts. One of the aunts is trying to kill her. One of them, took her in to protect her.
I just wanted to double check that because I swear that's what it was. There was the 2 sisters who had very different view. Well, it's actually Dominique's birth. The fact of who the father was the major point of contention. They wanted Dominique destroyed for all. They did not want this baby born because it was an affront to the family and to the legacy and everything. Well, obviously the mother didn't want this. The cousin took Dominique in. So the mother that Dominique thought was raising her was actually her second cousin that was raising her and treated her like a true daughter. Defied the aunt who wanted to be the voodoo queen, which that's the goal here, right? The aunt wants to be the voodoo queen, and Dominique would be the true heir to being a voodoo queen, so she wants Dominique out of the way so she can be in that position of power. Is that what's going on here?
Yes.
So, and obviously it's the affront to the family because of her parentage that is throwing this all off. And that's why she's being hunted by the guy with the guns, right? And the sword? Isn't it because of her parentage and that affront still?
See, I took it that guy is operating he's operating for other reasons. He wasn't sent by the sister, by the aunt.
Well, he goes back through history as being the assassin who killed the original queen, the original voodoo queen, right?
Yes.
Well, so that actually adds to your story then. So he's still hunting her down because of her legacy as the voodoo queen.
Yeah.
He would hunt down anybody who's the real voodoo queen? Is that what you're getting at? He wants to end the line?
Yeah, he's a witch hunter. The werewolf was sent by the sister. Well,
right.
By the queen.
Right.
Or the fake queen, or however you wish to refer to her as. That's who they sent. He is a completely different path. He's a different reasoning he's going after her, and that's something that will get fleshed out more coming down the pipeline.
These questions that we're asking are questions that I'm very interested in. I want to know who all these people are. It's funny, I've done a couple read-throughs on issue 1 and a couple read-throughs on issue 2, just trying to get a handle on all the characters and everything that's going on. And I actually like that. I'm doing it not because, I don't feel like the story's overly confusing. I feel that these are characters who have rich, deep backstories that are gradually being fleshed out. I'm trying to put them all together as we're going along. I feel this is a story that has a lot of depth and a lot of legs to it because it's not one-dimensional. These are characters that are multi-layered, that it's clear we don't know their whole story yet, and their motivations. Like, is everything we're seeing with this witch hunter taken as face value. I really love this kind of backstory. I love this kind of storytelling where we jump through a history. I want to know more of the history of the families, too. Because we've got 3 different layers of history going on here. We've got the original Voodoo Queen. Then we've got the heirs to the original Voodoo Queen, which was the 2 sisters. Then we've got Dominique in present day and her aunt. Right there are 3 rich layers of history, but there's more to be told from that, which gives this story a lot of what I'm enjoying. We love series like American Vampire. And one of the things I really like about that is the historical aspect of it. This is something that it can be set in a more modern setting, but also is set throughout this long, layered, rich history because we're dealing with vampires who can just, have that immense amount of longevity. And I love, this is something to me, it's a very Vertigo story. It's very rich. It's giving me something I'm not going to get in the regular DC universe. And this is something that I really was hoping for with this series because it's not like anything else I'm reading right now. And that's what's cool. Oh,
definitely. And it's one of the things that, as I said before, I started thinking off page because that's where a lot of this, discussion and thought process, where this is going, who this is, especially with the Witch Hunter, because that was the one I was like, I wanted to see, and I kept reading, trying to figure out exactly who he was, and I liked the mystery left around behind him that we still have more to flex out, because at the end of the issue, you have Dominique, will said something that, it's the whatever the language that is, which got the guy to calm down and stop attacking. Not only that, but then they're just about to have this open conversation, and the friend cop shows up and starts shooting at him, so he's got to retreat. And I loved seeing that, especially when, from the first issue, we had this guy introduced as dealing with this gangbangers, dealing with this gang that was trying to shoot, and you're thinking, oh, okay, that's just a bunch of gang activity going on in New Orleans because it's pretty tough down there. No, it turns out they also hired those gangs to try to kill Dominique. And, just these little connections that you're like, okay, this is this. No, it's not. Here's a little swerve for you. It's this. Oh, no, wait, it's this really. And I loved seeing just the duality and the flip-flops on the story where you're thinking 100% one way, and then boom, okay, time to turn it around. And here's something different. Here's a whole new way to look at this. So far, these 2 issues have been really fun rereads, going back through, rereading issue 1, rereading issue 2, just 1, 2. And I'm waiting for 3 to come out, because once 3 comes out, it'll probably put some more pieces together, and I'll go back again through 1, 2, 3 and reread all these things. This is a great mystery story unfolding.
Now, here's the question I'm having. Did he kill the witch hunter? Did he kill the Queen, Marie? Or did his people? Because, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but Dominique comes back from that world, that other world, which we'll talk about in a minute. And she whispers something to him, and that causes him to leave.
Right.
To stop what he's doing and to leave. This was the pivotal event that stopped her from dying. Stopped her from getting her head chopped off. The way that her adopted mother, or foster mother, died. My question is, what is his role? Did he kill the original Queen, or is he finding out what he thought was the truth, and what he thought his true purpose was? Is something changed now? Was he sent on a wild goose chase? By who?
Highly possible. And that's part of the questions that get raised. And it's one of the things I'm enjoying about the questions being raised, that exactly that thought you're having. We don't know exactly where. And I think with a lot of these characters, they're going to be neither 100% good, 100% bad. There will be some gray areas and just a little bit of, walk both lines, depending on the circumstances, depending on why they have to do what they have to do. And I think, again, with a supporting cast where you're not exactly sure where everybody stands, that makes for things can get very interesting very quickly.
So Dominique's being hunted by witch hunters, although I'm guessing there's more than one, because it's the Queen and her witch hunters. So I wonder if this guy might become an ally, but we're going to have other witch hunters coming after her. I don't know. And, that's one of those gray areas you're talking about. But on the other hand, then you've got Lord Ogun, who's after her, and then the aunt who is the quote-unquote queen, who's really assuming a role that's not hers, that actually belongs to Dominique, because Dominique has the power. Although I'm guessing the aunt has some form of powers as well that are, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But her relationship, the queen, the aunt, with this Philip X, the werewolf. I love that kind of stuff. She's got a werewolf who is basically her right-hand lackey, and she, as a confidant, relies on this person. But also, it seems like when the werewolf chops off the head of Ogun's emissary, she's very calm about the whole thing, whereas that Maleficent wasn't. Is looking at this as something that could cause a potential rivalry or cause a potential, break in that relationship. So these are all tentative relationships here. We've got clear factions. We've got the witch hunters, which I'm with you, seem to be at least right now their own faction. The queen, the aunt, the assumed queen, and then we've got Lord Ogun, and they're all gunning for same thing, power and rule. And these alliances are something that I think Dominique is going to have very interesting relationships with, because if she wants to, if she gets to the right level on this, she can play these two factions against each other. Not including the wild cards, the witch hunters, because I don't think that's going to work the same way, unless you can pit the other two against the witch hunters. I don't know. At least I don't know that I'm 100% sure the witch hunters are out of that whole thing. But at least right now, I'm kind of leaving them as a wild card because I'm not really clear if they're associated with either of those two factions or if they're their own thing. Are they with Ogun or are they? Go ahead.
I'm taking them. They're completely their own separate faction. They are witch hunters, and the point behind the witch hunter usually is to kill witches. Right. And I'm thinking they're sitting there and they see both sides probably as evil. And they probably are gunning for each one, and they're going after this whole bloodline, trying to take it out and eliminate it to weaken the line, because the current queen doesn't have the same type of power. She's got power, but it's not the natural. She's not the true heir, the passed on bloodline who actually received all of the Marie's power. That went into Dominique. That went in that way. So she's got some just because, she's family, just because she does have the blood in her, but she's not the true heir. She's not the true queen. So they're going after what they see as the true queen. Now, who knows what Dominique told her or why it actually affected the witch hunter. That's something I'm looking forward to issue 3, because then, I'm hoping 3, 4, 5, whatever, wherever it comes out, I'm hoping we get a little bit more on those guys, and we learn where they're coming from, why they're operating.
This whole Maleficent situation with Jacqueline, this actually says a lot about I'm actually agreeing 100% with how you're seeing her. I do think she has some form of power, but I think actually more of her power comes from the fact that she's surrounded herself with powerful lackeys and used intimidation as a way to assume this role of power. Because here's this great part when she's talking to Maleficent after the heads come off of Ogun's lackey. Here's what I want, Maleficent. No questioning of my rule from anyone. Now, when somebody says stuff like that, that comes from an area, you have to dig deep, but it comes from an area of, I've got to show you that I'm in power. You are not going to question it. And I'm going to keep showing you that I'm in power. And when these events happen, these serve as a great way for me to remind you that you just mind your place and do what I say. And people who need to do that don't really usually have real power, because real power, comes from respect that's earned, respect that's given, not from respect that's forced. She's got a very forced respect. That's always going to be a tentative respect, because when you get a bigger dog that comes into your yard, they're going to take over the yard. Yeah. There isn't a loyalty that's being built here to her. It's just because she happens to be the biggest dog in the yard right now, they're going to follow her. And I like that, because it's a bully. She's a bully, and it's working for her in this world. Dominique's a threat to that because of what you're saying. She knows that power's there. That would be something that she wants eliminated for just that purpose. This is not what she wanted. She wanted this kid dead a long time ago. This did not happen. This has now upset her plans, and she needs to have that stopped. And I like that. I mean, it's kind of thrilling, because we've got this very normal girl in Dominique. She's been raised as normal as she can be in this type of situation. But I mean, for meeting her in first issue, she seems like just anybody you would meet and run into from college or high school or whatever. This is a normal girl for those parts of it. And when she's thrust into this world, I think that takes us as the normal readers and puts us in a position where this book is very accessible. because I do feel like, wow, what would happen if this happened to me? And I like that in any story where I can relate to that and go, okay, the grasp of the magical and all that kind of stuff, it's not my world, but because Dominique's been living in my world, I now have an entry point into this story. And that's where this book, I think, is just very well written. And I can really feel like these are players that are in a mob story of sorts, with kind of this thirst for power that they're going for there, with a very magical end. I like that.
And and the neat thing is, it's a thirst for power. It's a fight for, you got the power struggle. But the thing I like is our main character, Dominique, really, she's not the power hungry, person. She doesn't want this. She's not going after it. She never pursued it. She just wanted to live her life. And had they just left her alone and not done what they did, she probably never would have gotten into the voodoo court. But because they have to make sure that they secure what little power they have, they had to go after her. And it always, kind of makes me chuckle at the villain mindset, because they have to, if they have to go after. They have to, secure the threat that doesn't exist, really. And by going after her, by actually lashing out and trying to kill her, they have now made her aware of this universe. They've made her a true threat now because they went after her. And I thought it was kind of a humorous sort of little, going to end up, coming back to haunt them eventually.
I thought an important part of issue 2, in issue 1, very early on, because of the fact that Dominique's world was being completely destroyed, as she knows it, all of her friends, potential allies, died. I mean, that's really what happened to her. So she was left very alone and feeling very responsible for their deaths, because it was death by association. By the fact that they knew her, they wound up being killed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong person. In this issue, we meet her first ally in Black Benny. She's about to get her head chopped off. He grabs her on the shoulder and pulls her into this ghost land. Takes her out of that world. I love this guy, because to me, one of the things I loved about movies like Live and Let Die, and this is the various stories that I talked about with New Orleans and Shadow Man and stuff like that, it's always fun when you're looking at these type of stories and you've got that guy I was a drummer in a blues band, and my goal is to make everybody happy, to take them blues away, just make life better. And that's what he's doing here. He's taking Dominique and saying, hey, I'm pulling you in here. I'm going to try to set you on the right path. So these people that are trying to do these dark things to you don't win. I'm on Marie's side. It's looking at the old classic voodoo queen. I want a better day. I like him. I mean, it's immediately something right from there. I love the artwork on him, because that sequence where he's introducing himself, where he's bowing down and saying, at your service, my lady, I'm Black Benny. You've got this cool little smile on his face, and just there's also a properness to him. He's dressed in a suit. He's got this old classic, old-style look to him. That's one of my favorite things about taking books that, like, I mentioned the Anne Rice books, with the Witching Hour and all that. I loved that those books went through the rich history of the Mayfair family, all the way through the past. And there's a romanticism to these characters having a history in New Orleans. And there's something about that. I don't know. I just really get into that vibe. And it's just something a little unique and different that I haven't had since books like your Shadow Man and Nightman and stuff. I was a huge Shadow Man fan. Both versions, actually, because it did have a relaunch through Acclaim. And I thought that was just one of the coolest books I've ever read. And, to have something set in this kind of environment again and be different and unique and fresh is something that I'm finding a cool factor, too. And the Dennis Cohen art, it just totally fits. This is a great creative team. Color work is great. Artwork is great. Lettering is great. This book just really has a nice flow to it 2 issues in. I really enjoyed issue 1, but issue 2 is really where the home run. I'm glad that we actually had to wait until issue 2 because we were doing Nightfall, because I do think this discussion's much better served, because I really feel like even though I've got a ton of questions and I'm still trying to get to know people in this world, I really feel like I'm attached to Dominique and Black Benny, which is really cool in this sequence, because they were such a focus of issue 2, and I needed to feel like she's got an ally at this point, an ally that I like and care about, and I want to see more of this ghost land, which is where the people go to die, that died in New Orleans, and just kind of, they live their life here. And I love that there's this potential for her to be seen by them, And if they do see her, that could be a very bad thing, especially if they're people that she had a connection with.
Yeah. Well, it's the power that Ogun has in that world. It's like he is one of the overlords of that world.
Yeah.
So they didn't want the attention because it's kind of like if you use your Matrix reference where, when you go into the Matrix, an agent can become any person that's in the Matrix. Well, Ogdon could use his power through any person there. And if you add somebody that has a personal connection to her, that will amplify, how well that person could work against them.
Here's my question, though. Can they, like Erica, her friend that she sees there, could she choose to help Dominique? That's one of the things that is interesting in this series. Like, we get this whole Ghostlands, which is like a shadow version of the real world, where the people are that have died. But then things that are structures, like these lions, these stone lions that are there, can come to life and become living entities that can be used as drones for Ogun to attack. And it's really a place where there's this tentative balance that's maintained because Marie is fighting against Ogun, because they had a love. Is that how you're reading this? There was a love between Ogun and Marie, or at least Ogun for Marie,
yeah.
And Ogun's willing to listen to her to a certain level, but that's a very tentative stretch as well. There's a tentative piece between the two of them, maybe. I don't know, piece is maybe a strong word, but at least this bought some time for Dominique to get out of there because Marie's seeing an opportunity for her bloodline to be continued where there's forces that want to end it.
I was also reading it that it's not just her bloodline to continue, but she can see some good to come out of this. And because I always took Marie as being not like the evil voodoo queen. You get voodoo in your head sometimes, and a lot of times you think there's been a lot of negative portrayals of voodoo with, zombies and various other creepy stuff that can happen through it. But there's also, on one side of voodoo, it's the natural, the Mother Earth, and that type of, feel and vibe to it. And I always kind of get that kind of vibe from Marie. And I think she's seeing Dominique as having that sort of path as well.
Oh, I'm firmly convinced Marie good, Ogun bad. Yeah. I mean, that wasn't even, and I hope I didn't make it seem like anything else. When I say that Marie wants to continue her bloodline and make sure that that bloodline's protected, I think she wants that bloodline to continue because she looks at the Voodoo Queen as being a balance against the evil forces of New Orleans. So I'm not taking the Voodoo Queen and the bloodline to be a bad thing. I think she very much wants her true heir to be in the position of power, not the aunt who is, more along Ogun's line and taking things down a very dark path. So we're in complete agreement on Marie's role in all this. While I say that Marie has some power in the Ghostland, it's a very tentative power. She's got some allies like Black Benny, and it'll be interesting to see if we have any more along the way. But most of that place, I agree with you, is totally under the control of Lord Ogun. And Marie just has a very tentative power there, or say, in that world.
Yeah. Well, she has a say because she is the Voodoo Queen, because she has her own power that she can operate herself, operate as herself, and it's more of she convinced him to let this happen. It wasn't, she didn't do some whammy-bammy, on him. He purely 100% let it happen, and even had the comment about, you stand between me and Kalfu's get at your peril. It's there. I think part of the anger isn't completely with Dominique, the Marie part of the bloodline. It's her father, his bloodline that has more of the issue.
Yeah, which to me is, I'm finding that incredibly.
We got a whole nother part that's going to come in and play out here, where what's going on with the Kalfu.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the terrific things about this series is there's a lot of depth to the direction this series can go in. I'm very interested in the characters and the whole world that's been crafted here. And Dominique's my focal point, but I really love that around her, there's just all of this stuff that's, this potential rich history to be explored, but also what's the world like in the present day. And that's immediately when I care about that, and I want to know backstory, and I want to know current day events, and I want to know how these characters relate. And when I'm asking these types of questions, that's a sign that I'm hooked into a series. When I don't care about that stuff, when none of that is interesting me, that's a book that I'm kind of, okay, it's time to jump ship because I just, the writer and the team hasn't hooked me. They've really hooked me into this. Like, I want to know who everybody is. And like you said, there's things in here that are just touched on that, like, it's clear this is going to be a rich story that needs to be told down the road that I'm like, we haven't even gotten to this yet, and we don't need to right now because of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, and when you have something that's this rich, this depth to go into, you could get very confused and you could lose readers through that. But one of the things I've liked about this is the fact that they keep the story going. They give you plenty of action. They give you plenty of cool kind of moments. Plus, then they're giving you the story enriching elements. There's just a nice balance between all of what you need to continue on the story. There's no one focus. Okay, this is purely a back issue. This is a backstory issue. No, we still have some current adventure going on. We still have some current excitement going on. We still have present, past, future, all blending together, all being told within the story. And as you said, the fact that Dominique is, first learning this as we're learning it is a great tool for a new character, to bring in people and just get you locked into who is the main character.
You know what it is? And this is pacing that I was talking about earlier. When we step back and look at the past, we're brought back to present day and to current events and characters that are going on. They never step away from anybody so long that you forget who they are in their role. Because as you're trying to get to know these characters, you need to come back and revisit them periodically so we're reminded as the reader who everyone is, what their relationships are, and we get to know them gradually along the way, that way. I still have a ton of questions. But we're 2 issues into a series, and they do a great job of coming back and hooking me into, okay, I want to know more about this character. I want to know more about this character, because they're not letting me forget anybody. And that's what you're touching on here. It's keeping things from getting confusing, because, I keep forgetting, too, she does have this ally on this side, Alan, the police officer that's there. And I love that he's helping her out, trying to do his job in a world like, this is a crazy, nutty world. And for him to be taking on this role of a friend, and I don't know if he's going to become a romantic interest or what's going to happen with him down the road, or if he's just going to be a good buddy. But I really love that he's tried and true to his job, does the right thing as far as she's a civilian. Get her out of the situation so that way I can concentrate on doing my job. I don't have my focus shifted on protecting her and myself at the same time while trying to take down the bad guys. I loved how that whole situation played out because we didn't really talk about that much. In his intro with her, where he comes in to save her on the scene where she's being attacked, he does. I thought that was just a great police move. Of course you would do that. Get her out of harm's way. That's your first order of business so you can concentrate on your job. You have a divided focus. Not only is it a danger to her, but it would be a danger to him as well. That to me was just really smart. I thought that was great storytelling because it felt very natural and very real in the situation. Protect the innocent first, then do your job so you can put full focus on, because a police officer does need to think about not just protecting the civilian, but also protecting themselves. And that to me is smart police work when you do that. How can we make sure to protect this person, get this situation under control, so then I can do what I need to do in a way that's as safe as possible for me, as safe as it can be for what he's going into. And I just thought that was really, really great because it just was very smart and good writing, I thought.
Oh, definitely. Can't, completely agree with you. And he's a character that definitely we're going to see more of the Guardian, more of the Protector, more of, as he gets pulled into this. Because I don't see them going with the route of her keeping anything from him. So as the Ant has her little minions, has her werewolf, has her advisors, she's going to start having her court, her advisors, and he's definitely going to have the role of Guardian. And I'm looking forward to seeing him throw down and him get into some fights because he's a scrapper and he takes it with the great. He's able to improvise, adapt, overcome. He was a really cool character and a great introduction to him. So yeah, I want to see more from him, especially as he starts getting into the really freaky stuff.
Once down in the town of New Orleans, sweetest, saddest town around, there died 3 beautiful girls. And I was like, whoa. And she's like saying, and somehow I'm in the middle of all this. Just what a great, we see 3 werewolves coming in, which I think that is a powerful ending, because I guess I was thinking to myself, okay, there's one of them so far, because all we've seen is one. Now seeing this go on, you got to wonder how many are there in this werewolf group? Are they a clan? Are there different factions of werewolves? There's just tons of questions that keep coming to me in this. And is there an antithesis of the werewolves? Is it the witch hunters? Is there something else? I don't know. It's just, to me, this has just been a great book. It's something different than anything that I'm reading right now. I think it's an area that we don't really have a whole lot of storytelling in right now, but I think in comics and in just media in general, it's offered rich, cool environments. I keep going back to Shadow Man and books like Nightman from Malibu, just because I thought those were two series that I thought handled this area and this region in a terrific way in comics. And, they're just great stories and really took advantage of the environment to make the characters unique, letting New Orleans be a character as well. Kind of like how we talk about Gotham and we talk about Metropolis and things like that. It's really set a mood and a tone that I'm really enjoying. And I want to know more about this world and how the writer and the art team sees this world. And that's something 2 issues in I think is really, really important for a series. This is a must-follow for me. With losing a book like iZombie, which has been something that I've been really, really digging from Vertigo, I need books like this. I need these titles in my reading list. It's a lot of times we talk about, you mentioned palate cleansers on this show. These are books I need in my reading. I need this book. This is important to me. I'm hoping that issue 3, 4, 5, continuing on, delivers this same kind of content. I've got great confidence in this creative team right now, because it just really was just an exciting read for me. A lot of questions still, but that to me is a sign of developing a rich world, not a one-dimensional world. I don't want all my questions answered right now. I want to read more, and I want to learn more as we go along. And this book really, really grabbed it for me. It's out of the 4. It's one of my favorites so far.
Yeah, this is probably, of the 4, this is my top pick. As much as I really dig Saucer Country, which I really just loved where that went and where it's going, this one has me thinking more off page. This one has me looking and thinking and going, hey, what about this? What about this? Hey, it's kind of opened up the mind going, I wonder, especially like when you're sitting there talking about the werewolves. I want to know what kind of werewolves are we dealing with? Are we dealing with the ones that only can be killed with silver? Are we dealing ones that can, you pretty much, you put enough bullets in them, they'll go down. You do enough damage, they'll die. Chop off the head, they'll die. What type of werewolf are we dealing with? And it's always have questions. And then whenever you have any undead, you start thinking, okay, do we have the other stuff? What else is in this world that we don't know about yet? Are we going to get some vampire action? Are we going to get some other, unworldly creatures coming out of this? What else can happen here? And that's when you have that big, broad opening of what else am I going to get, that kind of adds to the enjoyment of the matter.
Absolutely.
He did just thank me, right?
Indeed, he did, sir.
Weird.
Our next bit will be on New Deadwardians. The writer is Dan Abnett. Artist is I.N.J. Colbert. Colors by Patricia Mulvihill. Letterers Travis Lanham. Covered by I.N.J. Colbert. Associate editor Mark Doyle. Editor Will Dennis. And the New Deadwardians was created by Abnett and Colbert.
Are you aware you introduced that as our next bit?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is our bit then the fact that we horribly butcher creative teams every episode, or what is our bit exactly? That's why I was chuckling. You're like, our next bit. This is the part where we become characters and act out a skit for you.
Well, who is the real Jim? Is Jim the real Jim? Or is it the sensei of the whatnot? What's the real me?
Oh, I'm convinced you're like Sybil. So don't worry about it. There's definitely more than one of you.
Yeah.
And you talk to each other.
Yeah. In different voices.
One of the things I want to note about this one, and I think it's the only one out of those 4 new launches that's a miniseries.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I like a good miniseries. I like that we're going to get a good finite story here. I will say, you've read issue 2, which you have a little bit of an advantage of, and at the end of this, we'll discuss it. I did not have a chance this week to read issue 2 yet, but I have read issue 1 multiple times. Really liked this out of the starting gate. It's, there's a decent amount of vampire material out right now, not just through DC, but all around comics and in media and stuff like that. And one of the things I really like about the way this is set up, it's set in London, and it's set in this zones, where everything's kind of quarantined. I love in the beginning that right away I'm like, okay, this feels different because we got this vampire that clearly seems to be out in the open. And I was like, what's going on there? And then, people have this sickness, and what is this sickness? I didn't know what was going on as I was reading it initially. There's twists and turns in this that make this story a very unique vampire story. It feels like a TV miniseries event kind of thing, which I'm very into. And I don't know, I've been itching for a good miniseries, and I'm, Dan Abnett's really delivering some great writing here. The artwork, I think, is terrific for this. It just feels very different. It's something that's unique, and I need a good mini. So, I don't know, for me, that out of the starting gate, I think it's hard to do a clever new vampire story, and they did it. This feels like, it doesn't feel like the other books. I Vampire and American Vampire are 2 books that I'm greatly enjoying involving vampire themes, and this feels nothing like those.
Well, hey, you can throw iZombie when you're talking about this, because this is a zombie and vampire kind of meshing. It's it's the Reese's peanut butter cup. It's 2 great tastes that go great together. I loved how they explained where this. Well, they still haven't given you any details where this comes from, how this came about, but the whole process of the initial biting, the initial turning, you kind of become one of these zombies unless you take the cure and then you cross fully over and you become a vampire. And I loved how that just the initial opening of the explanation, little bits here, little bits there in issue 1, and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And as you said, it's a unique way of explaining and dealing with the vampire. And I don't know. The fact that it's taking place in London, brings me back to 28 Days, which was one of my favorite zombie movies. Even though it has the superpowered, the running, sprinting zombies, which I'm not a big fan of because I know I couldn't outrun them. But it has that proper feel to it, because anything that I see or hear that comes from overseas, it always has more of a more proper, more elegant style to it than in an American's tale. It's just how I look at things a lot of times. But I really like the fact that it was going on over there, that we're getting the story there, and there's some personalizations to life and how they would react and how they would deal with this epidemic.
See, I've always, as a kid, growing up, when I viewed vampires, I always viewed them as very proper. Very Bela Lugosi, that type of thing. So when we've got this subtle in bed, I love his whole inner dialogue. It's not the sleep that I miss as much as the dreams. I do miss dreams very much. I fail to recall now what my dreams used to be about specifically. I know they were generally about hope, wishes for the future, that sort of thing. Now I have more future than I could possibly need, and there is nothing I wish to do with it. And it's funny, a lot of times you see the romanticism of immortality, but he's also showing the negative of it. It's like there comes a point in time where it's like, I think we all wish for things because we know we have a finite time on this earth, and we want to, in that time frame, be able to do things of importance and to be able to enjoy this life that we live and hope that we've done it right, if that makes sense. And he's showing the other side of it, saying, what happens if you can't die? And what does that mean to you? I love the drawing of him, from the hairstyle to everything. It just reminds me very much of how classic vampires in media have been viewed by me. I'm not the biggest expert on vampire lore. There's a lot. I know in particular, have read a ton of vampire books. I know that probably a lot of our listeners are big fans of the genre. I am a fan of the genre, but I'm not the most well-read fan of the genre, so I'll admit that. But the stories that I've read, I greatly enjoy, and I do have a certain sense in my mind of what vampires are like. And I love that we see, like, the cross on his neck when he's sleeping at night. That was deliberately, the art team deliberately put it out in a way that we would notice it for this. Things that you don't normally expect to see on a vampire's neck, traditionally, are there and in place. And we get jumped right away into his world. He's got servants, or, butlers, and a cook. Unfortunately, the cook winds up getting taken down by this Restless, which means that, has that now brought the infection to his home? Is that what happens now?
Well,
if you get bit by this, you are infected? Is that how I'm reading this?
Yeah, that's the way I'm reading this. You get bit by, the Restless, you get bit by the zombie class, and you become a zombie unless you take the cure, which the cure is you become a vampire. That's the only way to defeat the zombie vibe in you. And the creature somehow got in. The maid was bitten. The cook was eaten. And, so it's... oh, well, bye, and we got to deal with the maid one way or the other, and we see he takes her in to get the cure.
So some people qualify then, because I noticed the year, like, on his box. From 1868, now it's 1910, and he still looks, pretty, from being alive since 1868, this is definitely a fella who has been a vampire for quite some time. A very proper man. Now, do you think he was ever bit, or do you think just because of his stature he was given the opportunity to get the cure, quote-unquote the cure, ahead of time?
I would say he was bitten, and he got the cure.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the zombies...
That's why when I first read this issue, that was the first thought that popped in my head, was that there was a war, there was some type of battle going on, because you see he's got the soldier uniform in there, the weapons, a soldier weapon. That's just not a general having the gun and hanging out with it. So my first thought was he was in this battle against zombies. Oh. And when he got bit in the war, they gave him the cure, is how I read it.
Wow. See, I associated that he just happened to be a war hero and just happened to have a very proper stature, and because of his stature in the community, he was given the cure. I'm not saying that the story you present to me is totally plausible to me, so I don't know if what route they're going. Was any of this revealed in issue 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not going to spoil exactly what happened. So what I've said may have happened in 2 or it may not have happened in 2. That's my opinion when I was reading it, the issue 1.
Okay.
Because one of the things that issue 2 does is it does give you a better view into the society and into the different classes. And it's not a flesh out, here's a map of society. It's, again, in his inner dialogue where he's discussing things. And it's as he's investigating this murder, you start to see a little bit more glimpses of what is London, what occurred, and what happened. So
let's put, in the spoiler warning at the beginning, let's put issue 2 in there. Is this revealed in issue 2? Because I don't mind. I mean, it's as long as we tell our listeners.
What you said is true. A lot of the rich people, because of their presence, because of they had the money, they had the power, they became vampires. Because a vampire is hidden to the zombies. So forget the middle class, forget the lower class. Let's protect our upper crust, and that's kind of where things happened.
Okay. Because that's what I was taking from him, was that his stature put him in that. And it wouldn't be very common then for Louisa, one of his servants, his housekeepers, to get the cure, right? He has to push for her to get the cure.
Yeah, and it's you don't know exactly how the cure is just administrated, but it looks like it's administrated from a vampire. So either he could cure her, or you take her to a site and she gets cured. And it seems to me like the to administer the actual cure may not be 100% legal or 100% authorized. There's probably limits on how many people you can turn, why you can turn them. That's why he had to take her into the site and into the place to get the cure.
Yeah. Which it's one of the things I really like about this world is that difference there, that this is a reaction to. Like, I'm wondering who the initial vampires were. Like, how did they come up with this solution? Is that revealed in issue 2 at all?
Not yet.
Okay, because I would love to know, like, what made them say, this is the route we've got to take in reaction to the fact that, there's so many of these zombies out there that we have to come up with a way to defend ourselves against them and to protect ourselves. The solution is, if we become vampires, we are no longer on their radar.
Yeah,
we become invisible to them, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing. We're not a lunch anymore to them.
Yeah, it's, you're no longer living, so you're no longer food to them. Mm-hmm. So you become invisible to them, and that's the whole, reason that it came about, the reason they started doing it. But they never say exactly where the cure comes from or where the initial virus comes from. They actually, he started hinting at the fact that no one knows yet. And my guess is, as this story goes on, we're probably going to learn something about it. We're going to learn where this comes from. Maybe we'll actually see the source of all this stuff. That's kind of the feeling I got from by the end of issue 2, that, this is maybe the path. Because initially I was thinking, okay, they're just going to do sort of life in Deadwardian London. There's not the Victorian era, it's Deadwardian era. And that's kind of how I saw this going. But as we get this introduction of the murder, as we get his investigation into the murder, which I thought was a cool concept. They kill off a vampire, but it's not the usual way. And they even make multiple references to it, that he died, but not the usual way. There's only certain ways you can kill the vampire. And he wasn't killed any of those ways. How did he die? And I love the fact that they're just the end of issue 1. They introduced the fact that this is a vampire who's been killed. And issue 2, they they flesh out his investigation. He starts just seeking the past on who the victim is, identify the victim, see where he came from, how did he come about. And it's a really cool play on, because he's following just a regular investigation path, what you would think a normal murder investigation, how they would handle it, but there's all these little tweaks because he's dealing with someone who's already dead. It's the murder of somebody who's already dead. And I really love just how there was a beautiful balance of zombie vampire story with a classic detective story.
Now, off the issue 1, the question I have, Zone A is where Subtle lives, and where we're seeing the events happen in issue 1 between police investigation and things like that in Zone A, about how one of these creatures have gotten in. Now, the creatures are getting in from Zone B, right?
Right.
Are those protesters that we see in issue 1, are they actually in Zone B?
I don't think they're in Zone B, but there's other zones. I'm still trying to figure out the map of London. That's something I actually do wish they had, a map of London, so I could see exactly where everything is at, where zombies are at. But Zone A is the creme de la creme. That's the high end people. They don't have fences inside between the houses, because that's one of the comments he made about that. There are patrols, but there's not. Every house isn't fenced in. Zone B seems more zombie zone, but then I think there's like a Zone C, Zone D, other zones that have either a mixture of the two. It's the lower end living. It's the quote-unquote regular, normal people living in there. So they've got to deal with life with zombies and the protection and whatnot.
So then are these protesters that are protesting Zone B then?
Yeah.
Are these people that are upset because of the risk from Zone B?
Yeah, it looks like it's not only the risk from Zone B, but what the government's doing about it. And it's the whole, you're protecting the rich class. What about us working stiffs? We're the labor union. We're the labor guys. We're the people who keep a city running.
Sure.
Yet you don't care about us.
Now, what's interesting is, this trying to keep corpses and things like that secret from them, because it would cause more unrest. It would actually validate a lot of their concerns, which is right, especially when they find out that one of the people killed was one of the vampires.
Yeah.
With the hand cut off and things like that. So what happened? I don't know. I love the whole filing of the teeth down, though, to maintain the presence of normalcy. And that's something that I really kind of stood out for me. So I'm curious to see, are these people protesting that have caused, this kind of unrest that caused this person to die? Is there more that you might know from issue 2? Because obviously, I'm guessing off issue 2, they continue to expand this case.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what issue 2 is really the fleshing out of the case, and it ends with issue 2 ends with him saying, "Okay, I got to go into Zone B now." So issue 3 will be about Zone B, and that's where I'm assuming we'll get more flesh out of the different layouts of London and the different, what is what, because that's something I'm kind of looking forward to seeing, is because I want to know a little bit more about this. And
Does issue 2 reveal the killer, or does it reveal more clues that lead him?
Oh, no, it just reveals the clues.
Cool.
We still don't know the killer. We've got a couple ideas. You know, they identify the body in issue 2, who he is and where he comes from, and that's what leads him to Zone B.
Cool. I really like this. It's a mini-series. I love that, it's an 8-issue story. I'm really glued into it. With the way it's from issue, and I'm just speaking off of issue 1, I have not read 2 yet. And it's not an issue of quality, it's just my time this week. My father's 70th birthday was yesterday. I did not have a chance to read a lot of my comics from this week. Yet, this is one that I really, it's on my short list of books that I want to read the second issue of right away, because I really enjoyed the first issue. Because of the fact that it's not your typical vampire story. It takes the vampire concept, takes the zombie concept, just handles it in a new way. Putting them together and putting them in this kind of setting and in more of a classic era where you're quarantining people and stuff like that is, to me, I don't know, it's just, and your actually comparisons to, what was the movie you were talking about earlier?
28 Days.
Yeah, I thought that was a great comparison too. Setting kind of a stage for something where they're using elements of that I think worked in this type of story. It's a lot of, I think, pulling from a lot of different genres and a lot of different films and a lot of different books and taking those cool concepts and thinking of them in a different way.
Well, I think that's the strength of this. This isn't just a vampire book. This isn't just a zombie book. This isn't just a murder mystery book. They really combined a lot of the cool elements that I've enjoyed. Issue 2 is a solid detective police investigative story. And if you take out just the fact that we're dealing with vampires and zombies and whatnot, and just look at it as this is a murder detective. A homicide detective who is working a case. And it's got the same elements of that, but it's a beautiful handling of it. This is a real enjoyment for me. I mean, I'm digging this. And on one hand, I agree with you. I like a good, miniseries, but on the other hand, part of me would like to see this continue on and be an ongoing, because I know there's going to be more that can be told in this universe. There's more that can be told in London from different points of view, from different people and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it is one of those things where I'm thinking if this miniseries is successful, there's opportunities to do more miniseries in the future with this storytelling. And I don't know, it's fun. It's something different. Vertigo's really, I got to say, this is now the 4th book out of them that we've chatted through. These have been, for me, 4 successful books. I'm enjoying all of them. I thought they're all different. And I don't know, I think the Vertigo line needed a little pumping up with some extra material now, because they've lost a lot of titles along the way. So it's great to see more books, with your DMZ and things like that leaving. They needed some titles to, boost up the line. Jack of Fables has been gone. We've got another Fables book in place. It's great. I don't know. I just think that these books have been very needed. Saucer Country was terrific. I will say, kind of at the end to sum up this whole thing, my favorite book out of the batch was Dominique Laveau. I can clearly say that now. But that's not a knock on the other titles. It's more of a compliment to Dominique Laveau. I thought all of these are ones that I'm excited to continue reading. Well, let me ask you this. I'm excited to read all 4 of them. I think that they're books that I'm really enjoying. Was there any out of the batch that you're like, I'm not going to continue reading?
No, I think I'll probably continue with reading them. Definitely going to continue on with New Deadwardians throughout the full series, because I'm really enjoying that. And Dominique Laveau, I'm excited. That's listed at the top of all of these titles. And with Saucer Country was when we first did our thing between Saucer Country and Ferris, Saucer Country had the victory. Mm-hmm. Then when we added these 2 new titles, Dominique Laveau jumped in, and I would actually. Deadwardians and Saucer Country are going back and forth for the number 2 spot, and Saucer's kind of winning because it is an ongoing, and I usually do put ongoings a little bit over miniseries, but I'm definitely locked in for the full 8 on this, and who knows with trades if they do anything deluxe or any fancy editions, I probably would pick it up just for rereadability, because I'm really loving the Deadwardians, just the concept and the story behind it, just where they're going and what we've seen so far. It has me really excited for the future of.
See, I like a mini, and I like to have a couple good minis going at a time, because it's fun sometimes to have a story with just a great beginning, middle, and ending that's just intended to be in a contained time frame. You know, like, not because the series is being rushed to an end or something like that. It was crafted at the beginning to be an 8-issue miniseries, which means the pacing of this story by the writer is developed with that in mind. And I like that every so often. It's great to have a good one of those in there. So I'm really excited for New Deadwardians for that, because it'll be great to get that. And then, you know, that budget then, when it's done, is freed up to go on to another miniseries. I need a few minis going. And I don't mean just for the sake of just having a mini going. I like that just kind of contained storytelling. It's something just a little bit different than a monthly book is going to throw at you. And I don't know, that's kind of my take on it. This has been really fun. I'm glad we got to do this, because you and I haven't been able to in a while talk a lot of Vertigo on the show. And these newly launched books just offered a great opportunity. You mentioned Ferris before, and for me, being a Fables fan, Ferris just was a natural. I like the anthology aspect of it. And one of the cool things about Ferris, and this is something I want to remind readers, you know, wherever you're at on the first story arc of Ferris, I really am enjoying it so far. But if you're like, you know, maybe that first story arc isn't your cup of tea, I do encourage you with books like anthologies. I'm a big fan of them. I love storylines where, you know, we got a mini here. You know, it's 5 or 6 issues long. Then we're going to jump on to a new story. I do encourage you to, you know, read the creative teams and the blurbs for the next story arc coming up in a book like Ferris if you're not reading the first story arc or if you jumped off it, because I think these books need support. I was a big fan. I've referenced many, many times book like Legends of Dark Knight on the show. I was a big fan of that title because of the fact that you could read an arc, jump off, and jump back on that book, you know, if a creative team or a story arc blurb interested you, because they're contained. These are basically ongoing. It's an ongoing book of miniseries, for lack, you know, of any other way of looking at it. So do with Ferris and books like that, if you are into the Fables universe, take a peek at each new arc and jump on when you do, because I think it's important for companies to see that these books, those type of books, do have legs, and that, you know, that fans will come and go for arcs. Because I think sometimes those titles get dropped too soon. You know, if maybe one arc doesn't get a certain amount of readership, and I think it'd be good for them to see, hey, maybe we should stick with this because it may get, you know, maybe the second arc will get more readership, or things like that. Is, you know, kind of get out of the concept of issue numbers with titles like that, because I don't think they matter as much in a book of ongoing minis, if that makes sense. You know, so give that book a chance in the second arc if maybe you didn't like the first arc. I don't know if that makes any sense, but for me, I'm enjoying it right now. So I'm coming at a standpoint from a reader who's enjoying it and wants to see it continue, because I like that style of book. It reminds me of what I liked about Legends of Dark Knight. Obviously, it's not a superhero book at all, but I like that I'm enjoying the current story, and I love that the next story arc is going to just be completely different. That's fun for me. You know, I'm liking the current DC Universe book, the DC Universe Presents, because of that. We get finite stories. We know the next story arc is going to be a new creative team with a whole new concept. These are books that I need in my reading library because there's something just a little bit different. You know, I read a lot of comics. I love the different stuff, you know, as well as, you know, the tried and true regular serialized monthly stories. I think, you know, you need a little bit of a mixture of both. Comics have a lot of diversity in the types of books and stories they can deliver. And to me, anytime you homogenize it too much, we're losing part of the creativity of comics. Now, these are 4 books that I just thought oozed with creativity and very different. So I'm glad we got to talk about them.
Could you just once say, let's get in the car? Is that so hard?
I want to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype, and that's available in our show notes and on our website as well. Speaking of our website, I also want to shout out our Facebook group, Twitter, and Google+. Our Facebook group is really active, and I want to thank everyone who posts there. I love how the community has just evolved out of the show, and just like-minded people who really like talking comics, and it's a really positive environment. I just want to thank everybody who posts there. I enjoy popping in to see topics that people are starting, and I want to thank everyone for doing that. Please feel free to use our Facebook page and our Facebook group to shout out anything relating to comics or geek culture in general that you think would be of interest to our audience. I love cross-promotion. I welcome people to go ahead and start using that avenue to shout out things. I'm using Twitter more and more. I do use it every week to update people on what's going on with the show. When the new episodes are going to be coming out, what the status is of episodes, when we've recorded, when it's going to be edited and put out. So that's a great opportunity besides our website to just get up-to-date information on what's going on with the show. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. This week, head on over to DCBService.com to see the amazing deals they're offering for the month of May for pre-orders. Over at InStockTrades.com, you want to check out Black Orchid, the deluxe hardcover. This is a wonderful 4-issue miniseries. Neil Gaiman, Dave McKean. Great opportunity to get this 168-page volume, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. Remember, InStockTrades.com, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. I want to thank both of those companies for continuing to support Raging Bullets. Jim, our next episode is going to be Superman. We are going to take a look at the most recent issues of Action Comics, Superman, Supergirl, and Superboy. If time, we're also going to discuss Teen Titans. We're going to take a look and see how the time goes. Otherwise, if not, we will put Teen Titans on another episode. We are going to go back and cover all of the issues of the New 52. Again, taking a look at where the story arcs are going now and how we feel about these books now there's been some development of some of them. We're also going to take a look at the new 52 books, the new launches of the books that are replacing the books that have been recently canceled. So that's going to be kind of a fun discussion to kind of take a look at where the directions are of the current books and also where the new books are heading. We will see everyone next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Are closing in, be they then in guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan. What you do to me, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see, Hawkman, your plan, what you do to me, Hawkman, talking about Hawkman.